Hi, good afternoon or good evening, I should say. Welcome to the Beverly Hills School Board meeting. Today is December 1st and it is 5:24 p.m. and we will call this meeting to order. And may I ask Mrs. Timmerman, special guest with us tonight, to lead us in the flag salute, please.
Oh, of course. Put your right hand over your heart. Please stand. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Timmerman.
You're welcome.
At this point, we're going to, I'm going to ask Dr. Breggy. Dr. Breggy, will you please report of closed session action? Please?
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, wait, sorry, you have to approve the agenda.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All those in, any questions or all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for that. Pam, I'm so glad you joined these meetings. What would we do without you? Okay, so now we're going to ask Dr. Breggy to please give us the report of closed session.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Hacker. In closed session, the board took action to notify the temporary certificated employee identified by employee numbers TP 3437504 and BE 674718 that the employees will be released from their temporary contract effective December 31st, 2020, and for the remainder of the 2020-2020 school year, and non-reelected for the 2021-2022 school year, and directed by the superintendent or designee to send out the appropriate legal notices.
Thank you, Dr. Breggy. We're going to move on with teacher spotlights. We have with us from Hawthorne PBIS team, Mrs. G, who is the PBIS coordinator, Mrs. Timmerman, the fourth grade teacher, Mrs. Jocelyn Resnick, kindergarten teacher, Carla Hess, fifth grade teacher, and Lindsay Holberg, fifth grade teacher and Kind Club coordinator. All of these teachers are teachers, as I said, from Hawthorne. So welcome, and Dr. Breggy, should I defer to you, or who's going to lead us? Maybe Mrs.
Actually, Mrs. Kaber will kick us off, and I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight, especially right after a break where we all had the theme of being grateful. I'm very grateful that you are here today and to talk about a program that has been customized for each school in our school district that is just thriving. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, President Hacker and members of the Board of Education. Thank you, Dr. Breggy and Cabinet, for having us here tonight. Those of you who don't know me, I'm Sarah Kaber. I'm the principal at Hawthorne School. And I'm really excited to be here with 4 of my teachers. Unfortunately, Ms. G couldn't be here, but we have 4 teachers that are here. We're going to talk about PBIS and talk about what it looks like in action on our campus, not to really teach about it, but just so that you have a sense, PBIS is the pedagogy word for the framework behind what Hawthorne students hear as HERO, H-E-R-O, and each of the teachers is going to talk a little bit about what that is. I want to thank the Board of Education for sponsoring LACO to come in and teach us about how to implement PBIS so well. I want to thank Ms. Chisholm and Student Services, Angela Lawyer, and BHEF for making this possible. I think it's definitely helped to frame our culture at Hawthorne and really bring us all together as we became this new elementary school. I want to be able to present. Can I do that, Ms. Starkins? Okay, perfect.
Yes, is it working?
The first thing that you do when you start PBIS is form a team. And this is my team. It's loading. This is our team. So far, we have a site coach, that's Ms. G, and we have our counselor on it and teachers that volunteer to be part of it. And included in this group of 9 amazing people is also these 4 people who are here tonight to share. Carla Hess, who's a 5th grade teacher, and this is her 7th year at BHUSD. Lindsay Holberg, who's the 5th grade teacher also, and Kind Club coordinator, also her 7th year in BHUSD. Jocelyn Bresnick, who's a kindergarten teacher. It's also her 7th year at BHUSD.
Oh.
And Kim Timmerman, who teaches 4th grade, and it's her 27th year at BHUSD. And one of the things that was important to us as we came together, or I'll stop sharing, as we came together to form this group is that we had teachers that were from Hawthorne originally and were from El Rodeo originally. So both Ms. Holberg and Ms. Bresnick previously taught at El Rodeo, and Ms. Hess and Ms. Timmerman both taught at Hawthorne previously. So I'm going to hand it over to Kim first to start.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Good evening. So I'm going to back up a little bit and go back to last year when we were in person. We started the year as a brand new K-5 school, introducing the HERO acronym to our students. They don't know what PBIS is, but they're very familiar with a very user-friendly version, which is HERO. The H stands for honorable, the E stands for engaged, the R stands for responsible, and the O stands for open-minded. And so I'm going to share my screen with you. What we did was we introduced a school-wide matrix. Sorry, let me get rid of my thing there. We introduced a school-wide matrix to the students that talked about the expected behaviors that we wanted to see at Hawthorne. This matrix was invented not just by the PBIS committee, but also all of the staff. Everybody was involved in this. We wanted to have buy-in from everybody. So we developed this matrix on behaviors that we wanted to see everywhere in the school so that we were incredibly consistent. So the cafeteria, the bathroom, hallway, stairwells, playground. And as you can see from this, the one thing that is missing is the classroom. We left that up to each individual teacher to develop a matrix for their own classroom. This is the matrix that I had last year. So my class developed the behaviors that we wanted to see in our classroom. And here they all are. I had this posted in my classroom so we could refer to it all year long. And then this year happened, and all of these behaviors sort of went out the window. So what we did really quickly was we came up with a virtual matrix that we could now refer to. And so instead of our brick and mortar places that we wanted to see these behaviors, we now have virtual places where we wanted to see honorable, engaged, responsible, and open-minded behaviors. And this is school-wide. These are behaviors that are expected, you know, with a substitute, with a specialist in a breakout room, so that we are all just incredibly consistent. And then we also have we have so many resources, but this is a great handbook that we have for our teachers that they can use this year. But then, of course, the buy-in from the individual students comes from the matrix for the individual classroom. And I just wanted to stress that this year, especially having the kids be a part of making these classroom matrices was so important, because I think they were all incredibly nervous about how they were going to learn. And they wanted to be a part of making the rules and knowing that they were in a safe and constructive place to learn. And I wasn't anticipating that, but it really became a very important part of the first few weeks of our school year. So all of the teachers did this. I'm just going to show you what I did. I used this program called Jamboard, where I made my own matrix, and I put the kids into groups, into breakout rooms, and they came up with behaviors that they wanted to see in their room, in our room, for honorable behavior, engaged, responsible, open-minded. And here are just several samples of the groups that they did on their own. And then we came back together, and this is our final product of all of the behaviors we came up with. And I can't even tell you how important it's been in this new environment. And we refer to it all the time. So it's not on my bulletin board, but it is at the very top of my Google Classroom. It's there for everybody to see. It's on my website. It's just a very big part of our classroom that we refer to all the time. And then the last thing I want to talk about is that one of the ways we had last year of acknowledging positive behavior from our kids was to give them a hero card. And it was a great way to say, good job exhibiting Hawthorne hero behavior. And this year we don't have these physical cards, but we do at Hawthorne have the virtual hero card. So this is available to all of the teachers. We can fill this out and have a hero card sent to our students, which, believe it or not, they love. They're just as valuable as the real ones. And then of course, teacher buy-in is just as important. So we actually also have colleague hero cards where we can send hero cards to our colleagues or staff members if we want to acknowledge their positive behavior, which is also very great as well. So I think it's working great brick and mortar, and we're also having a very successful year virtually. Then I'm done.
Great, thank you for that. I'm not sure.
So sorry.
Yes.
We just have a few more, so sorry. Ms. Hess is going to present.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us here. I'm Carla Hess, if you don't know me. I teach 5th grade. And what Kim was just saying, what Ms. Timmerman was saying, really segues nicely into what I'm going to talk about, which we have the hero cards that we were using last year and the virtual ones. But one of the things that I sort of realized, especially for my 5th graders, that they wanted was more of that peer connection, the ability to recognize when they saw in each other that they were following these hero expectations. So one of the things that we do is class shout outs. So it looks sort of like a little bulletin board. It's Google Slides that live in our Google Classroom. And they can fill out a Google form, 1-question form, like what do you see, who was it? And then I will post it, and then every few days we'll go back and read them out loud in class. And they always get so excited to see who's on there. Are they on there? Is there a shout out that they posted on there? And even if it has nothing to do with what they said, they love to see the recognition from other people. And it really has fostered a positive classroom culture and a lot of trust and respect between the students. And so these are just a few on the screen from yesterday and today. We already, I think, have had 6 in the last 2 days. They really love recognizing each other for these positive traits. So things like one of our Hawthorne heroes is being open-minded. So someone gave a shout out because she cooperated in math and was open to ideas. So it's things like that they see in each other. And we've even had, I have this year, 3 students who are completely new to the district, and they were really nervous about coming in, and parents were really nervous about how are they gonna make friends. And some of the shout outs are for another classmate because he was my first friend. And so it's things like that where they have made those connections based on all of this reinforcement.
Okay, I'm going to hijack the screen now. Hi, everybody. I'm Jocelyn Bresnick. I've been here before. Hello again. Thank you for having us and letting us spotlight some of the amazing things that we're all doing. I am going to share my screen. I promised myself I wasn't going to say that, but here we are. So one of the things that we have been working on as a team is incorporating social emotional learning and making sure that every teacher has an opportunity in their day to have a space for social emotional learning. So one of the ways that we came up with doing that was every teacher, virtual right now, is doing a morning meeting. So in the morning, they're doing some sort of, you guys have seen that before. I think Annie was on here and she showed you something that she does. So that's one of the ways that we in kindergarten incorporate morning meeting or incorporate the social emotional learning. And we love being Hawthorne heroes. This is like the coolest thing of the day, is like talking about all the ways that we can be honorable, engaged, responsible, open-minded. So as Kim showed you, we're able to send the kids cards, but my kids don't check their email yet because they're 5. Some of them are 6, so they don't check their email yet. So I have kind of come up with this digital hero card that I sent to them on Seesaw, which is the platform that we use to share work. So I'm not going to play my voice because I can't stand it, but I just wanted to show you, I send these cards out and then I record my voice. That's what that play button is for. I record my voice telling them, you know, hey, Sarah, you've received this hero card for being responsible. You had all of your materials ready to go. You sent me a picture of it. You were so excited and that sort of thing. So then what's cool is that they can, it's scrolling down, they can respond back to me, which is so fun. And they love emojis, but they also can.
Teacher Bresnick, I am super happy being a Hawthorne hero, and I love you.
Yeah, so that's Ariana. I have lots of these. So if you ever are having a bad day, I can send you these. So what's cool about that is that we can have this ongoing dialogue, right? It's not just I'm handing them the card and then like, I hope they read it and it goes into a black hole. We actually have this dialogue back and forth, sometimes with emojis, sometimes with their voice. Okay, and then this one I wanted to show you guys because number one, he's watching. So Hale, you're on TV. That's what he thinks, he's on TV. I told him that I was gonna show this video. So everyone wave to Hale because he's very excited about this. Yes, Hale, you're amazing. Okay, so I have to show you this. So this was after, we talk about being a hero all the time and I sometimes will send them an assignment. What does it mean to be a Hawthorne hero? And so they can just kind of share, you know, like, oh, I was nice to my sister, and they get really specific like that. Or sometimes they talk generally about how we apply it in school. So I'm just gonna play this because it speaks for itself. He's just so cute.
Aren't I?
Oh, okay, I watched it.
How you be a Hawthorne hero? You gotta listen to your teacher and be responsible and have your stuff ready and like everything else. And be nice to your friends and pay attention and have an open mind. All of those stuff? Yep. And I got that Hawthorne Hero Award. That was a long time ago, right? Yeah. Would you want to see this video more or not? Or not? Or not? Or not?
Yeah, I sure would, Hale. I've watched, yeah, look at that. Look at him. Look at him. I mean, I give out hero cards all the time just for responses like that. It's like the cutest thing ever. I know, he's amazing. He'll send you videos all day, by the way. His name's Hale, he's gonna be famous. And I gotta show you one more because why not? I mean, this is so much fun. I gotta show you one more. So this guy is, hopefully it's loading. I don't know if you guys can see him. I don't know if it's changed yet, but this is my friend Louie. And Louie is gonna be a brilliant scientist one day. So watch out for Louie. And I'm going to let him take it away.
Hi, Louie. Can you tell us about the O in Hawthorne Hero? What does it stand for?
Open-minded.
And what's open-minded?
It's when you love to try new things. And I'm getting a new science kit today, and I'm so excited to do it. It's my newest one. I got it.
And are you feeling very open-minded about new things?
Yes. I'm so excited to make things glow in the dark. I don't know what I think the putty will be green. I don't know. Bye, Mrs. Resnick.
Anyway, so what's great too is that, you know, the parents are involved. So because they can see everything on Seesaw, they're able to go in and see, you know, what I'm sending the kids. So if I send them a hero card, the parents can go in and they can actually see that and listen to my comments, and they can leave a comment back. And so it becomes this really familial thing that it's not just limited to the classroom. This is something that translates to home as well, which was also one of our goals as a team, was to get this language going at home. So that's all I have, because I have a lot, but that's not what this is for. So if you want to see more, you can just let me know. I'm happy to send them. It's very cute. This is my job. So thank you for my job because I love it.
Okay, hi. Thank you, Jocelyn, for sharing that. That was so cute. I'm Lindsay Holberg. I am a 5th grade teacher at Hawthorne Elementary, and I am the Kind Club coordinator as well. For those of you that aren't too familiar with Kind Club, it stems from a nonprofit organization called the Kind Campaign, and the purpose of it is to prevent girl against girl bullying. So I got involved with Kind Club in 2016 and brought it to El Rodeo, and I was lucky enough to bring it to Hawthorne after reconfiguration. So that's very exciting. So it's a group of girls, and this year we have a wonderful group of 5th graders. We meet every Thursday from 3 o'clock to 3:45. And over the years, Kind Club has developed not only into a program that prevents girl against girl bullying, but also we want to allow our members to become kind leaders at the school. So to incorporate PBIS and HERO, our most recent task was to create a video for our student community about how students can be a hero at home during home learning, because sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. So I'm going to show you that video now, and you will get to see some of our amazing girls that are a part of Kind Club. Let me just share my screen with you.
Hi, I'm Damavandi, and here are some ways you can show kindness and compassion to the people who are at home doing distance learning. For example, don't send any messages that are rude. How I showed kindness and compassion was by donating to the homeless people. To us people who are not homeless, it's just a small little thing to do. But to the homeless people, it's a very big thing to do. Think about it. You are making a huge difference in a person's life. You can always help people. For example, you can help parents, you can help your friends, you can help your siblings, anybody. You can always help people. There's no rule saying you can't.
Hi, I'm Charlie, and have you ever got mad at one of your siblings, or even not just your siblings, it could be your mom, your friend, your dad, anybody? Well, one way I help everyone, mainly me, not get angry, is by taking a deep breath so that I don't end up screaming at everybody. Also, you can talk to them and say you're sorry, and even do a chore for them as a favor. Those are a few ways that I do to help everybody and me not get angry.
Hi, my name is Shayna, and some ways you can show courage online, aka Zoom, is by maybe giving compliments to your classmates, teachers, or your school principal. That's surely going to make them feel great. Or turn assignments in on time. Don't get your teachers frustrated. Maybe listen to instructions the first time, or maybe help your classmates and friends with their homework. Bye!
Hi, I'm Morgan. It's sometimes hard for me to focus in virtual learning because my phone is right next to me, or if it is doing work right next to me, and you want to talk to them. I get it. It's hard. And sometimes I get missing assignments. I sometimes get mad at my mom or dad because they want me to work on them right after school. Instead of screaming or complaining, you could just ask your mom or dad for a 30 to 45 minute break. It gets you relaxed, and then you can do your homework. This helps me since when it's done, it isn't just sitting there, and then I can relax or hang out with friends.
Hello, my name is Ellie, and I'm going to be sharing a couple of ways that you can be kind and compassionate during the pandemic and virtual learning. I believe that a number of us struggle with being kind and compassionate during this time because of some people, like our siblings. There are small acts of kindness that you can commit to doing. For example, donating. If you donate for money for a good cause that is very kind and compassionate, you can donate to pet shelters, homeless shelters, and a children's hospital. You can also do something for your teachers. It can be very hard on teachers during this time because they're teaching a screen full of kids. Imagine how your parents are feeling, except for 2 or 3 times that. You can write them a note or card and thank them for their hard work. You can also thank any other person that you feel needs to be thanked, such as a mailman, doctor, or someone that works at a grocery store. An example of me being kind and compassionate during the pandemic is when my mom had a headache. When she had a headache and she wanted water or food or something like that, I always made sure I got it to her somehow. Make sure to be kind and compassionate during this time. Bye!
Hi, my name is Emily Beal. Home learning has been tough, but here are 2 ways that me and my family show kindness and compassion to each other. First, we show kindness and compassion to each other by spending quality time with each other. We do the dishes together, we eat dinner together, and we take walks together. We talk about our days and talk about what's going on in the world and what we're looking forward to. This helps us. Second, I show compassion and kindness to my brothers by playing outside with them. This helps me get fresh air and helps me get energy out from the long day at school and looking at a screen. Those are the 2 ways that I show kindness and compassion to my family during home learning.
How I show compassion during home learning is by being aware of my surroundings and not yelling when my sister is on Zoom or when my mom is working, even not when turning my computer super loud and not disturbing anyone. Make sure to try this way out to be kind because it can really help. Bye!
And that is our video, and that's all I have for you guys today.
Thank you all 4 of you for being here. I cannot thank you enough for everything that you shared and made us laugh, and it was so fun. I want to say that the Kind Club part of that, the being kind at home and being a hero at home, is part of a bigger campaign that we're doing about being a hero at home because of home learning. The idea that PBIS was here when we were reconfiguring and allowed us to really put in a framework for us to walk along as we created a new school and a new community has helped in going out to home learning, right? And going out because of COVID, it's something that we can go back and touch on over and over again. So all of you are invited every Wednesday morning, tomorrow morning at 9:45, we have a big hero assembly where we go over what hero stands for and what attributes we're looking for. And we sing we say our alma mater. And the other part is that not only does it give us a framework for what we're doing now, it's actually our team is currently working on what will it look like. The matrix that Mrs. Timmerman shared, we're putting together a matrix for behavior expectations, preparing for students to be back on our campus. Everything is going to live within PBIS, within Hero. Like, how are you honorable when you walk in the hallways? Again, we had it before and now we have to go back to it. What does it mean to be responsible in this time of hybrid learning as we're back on campus? And so we're so thankful again to Angela Lawyer and to Ms. Chisholm and Student Services and to all of you for introducing us to PBIS and helping us to make this team, and to my amazing team, only 4 of you here to represent the amazing group. So thank you, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Mrs. Kaber, and to the entire team for being with us today and for educating us on PBIS and the HERO program, specifically at Hawthorne. An education I have to tell you that I received directly from Mrs. Timmerman last year. Anyways, so it was great to see all of you and to hear the students, of course, was the highlight of today's presentation for me. How fun the work that you all do. And thank you for sharing it with us. Any comments or questions from board members before we move on? No, thank you again for being with us. Very nice. Okay. We are going to move on with staff presentations. Dr. Breggy, I defer to you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hacker. Actually, Mr. Wade Roach will kick us off with our demographics report and our guests.
President Hacker, members of the board, it is really tough to follow those kids and talk about demographics after seeing those amazing kids. So we have Scott Torlucki here from Davis Demographics to go over the demographic report for 2021. Scott, you can take it away.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. This is not going to be nearly as fun as that was. That was a great presentation. Well, thank you for having me, everybody, and I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I know it's a weird year, but and this is always strange doing these video presentations. But okay, so Ms. Starkins, can you go to the first slide there, or the slide 2? Thank you. So say, my name is Scott Torlucci with Davis Demographics. I'm going to be telling you about the demographic study for this year, a little bit about our philosophy, our methodology, and deliverables. Our philosophy starts with everything's based on where the students reside. It's all based on residents because school enrollment doesn't necessarily reflect the area demographics. We know we want the facilities to be where the residents are. We collect various data throughout the district, including student data, birth data, other data that's relevant to the forecast. We create short to midterm student population forecast, a district-wide attendance area, and by study area. You should have a report that we sent in that has all the findings. You have the student capture rate analysis that we do in that report, also a student transfer analysis. That's where the students reside versus where they attend school. And then we have this wealth of data available for any future analysis. Next, please. Just quickly, just so you understand the data that goes into this, this is what's called GIS data. It's your smartphone, Google Maps, it's your GPS in your car. It's all that rolled into a information system behind the scenes. So what we have here is we're looking at the district boundary. We've got the 2K5 school attendance areas. The bottom left side, we've broken those areas down to what we call study areas. Those study areas are small geographic regions that are separated by major streets, freeways, railroad tracks, anything that is a major thing that would be a good boundary. We can then do analysis down to that study area level. So in the very lower right side, you can see each of those red points represents at least one student living in there. So now I can look at a specific study area, tell you the number of students living there, the grades, what schools they're attending, and any other relevant information we have. So we've got this wealth of information down to the students as we're doing our slide. Could you go to the next slide, please? With that, we use all this information plus, and should I say 3 factors, to do our forecasting. Again, we do each one of these forecasts at that study area level, and it's based on the residents. We move all the grades up and graduate the 12th grade class. And then there's 3 main factors that affect student population: incoming kindergarten class, mobility, and new housing. We're going to go into all 3 of those, and there's just a little visual there for everybody to look at if you want to see what really happens. That's how it all goes in there. So let's look at the next slide, please. I'm going to start with the incoming kindergarten class. So in a normal year, incoming kindergarten is determined looking at the births from 5 years previous to this year. So in 2015, our 2020 kindergarten students were born. We look at those number of births, which was 364, and then we look at the next 4 years to see if those births go up and down. And we would then take that number, that ratio of increase or decrease, that delta, and apply that to future kindergartners. As you can see, just as background, I've looked at 15 years of birth data for the 3 zip codes that make up your district, and the average has gone down by about 40 births per year over that 15-year time span. So there's definitely a decline in area births. That's common. I'm sure you've all heard about it. That's happening throughout. Now, I did mention that this is the normal procedure. You look at the 2015, then the subsequent 4 years, and make the adjustments from there on the K class. Well, there's nothing normal about 2020. So if you go to the next slide, when we're looking at this, we looked at the number of kindergartners in the resident and enrolled, and compare that to past years. We've done work from you since 2017. We have data from you from 2015 when we did the 2017 work. Looking at that, we could see between 2015 2019, the resident number of kindergarten students was 207 or 209 at the high, 149 at the low, but it's closer to 200. The enrolled was 268 high and 193 at the low. Well, or 193 at the low. Well, this year, you can see our 2020 numbers. There's 115 resident kindergartens, much smaller than any class that you've had. And enrolled is 126, like also much smaller than any other class. So since we base the future kindergartners on the current kindergarten class, that was going to negatively affect our forecast. Mr. Roach and I discussed this, and we decided to use 178 kindergartens for resident over the next 4 years, approximately around 178. That's the average of 2016 to 2019 resident kindergarten class. We're saying, well, we don't think this is going to happen and keep happening at this 115 level. We do feel it's going to go up again, probably closer to what the average has been. So that's one of the caveats we've used in this. We can go to the next forecast, the next slide, please.
I think we lost him.
I don't know what happened. I'm here again. That was strange. Okay. The next factor that goes into this is mobility. Mobility is looking at the number of students, retention of students as they move throughout the grades. If you have 100 first graders, you would expect 100 second graders the next year. What we do is we look at each grade transition, K1, 1 to 2, etc., and look at that over a 4-year period to see if we're getting more students moving into the district than leaving the district. Anything in green you see is positive. Anything in red is negative. You are more positive than you are negative. So you're getting more students as you come in than you do than that leave. If we go to the next slide, we're going to look at that a little bit closer. So again, we've done this for a few years now. So we looked at this in 2014, 15, to 2017, 18, that 4-year time frame. Again, this is just looking at the number of students living in there in each of those attendance areas. I know there was other attendance areas back in 2017, 18. I took today's attendance areas and overlaid it onto the old student files. And you can see between the 2017 one, the 2016 one, and then 2021, or 2017, 2019, 2020, it gradually got less green and a little bit more red. So you're still very positive. You're getting students moving into the district from out as they go through the grades, but you're not quite as positive as you were. The difference is you can see is 6% from K to 1. So you were averaging 108%, meaning you're getting 8% more students from kindergarten to first grade. Now you're down to 102%. Again, COVID is going to have an impact on that at this point. We understand that. But right now, what we've done is I'm using these numbers in this forecast because this is what it's showing here. And it's a trend that did happen pre-pandemic. So we're keeping that trend going. Go to the next slide. Now, the reason why this is important is because the mobility affects each grade, each student in each grade for every single year. So looking at the Hawthorne mobility, the 104%, those 55 students turn to 57.7. After it goes through each year's mobility, those 55 students turn to 57.6. That's not a big difference, but again, when you're applying that factor to every student, to every grade, every year, those numbers do make a sense. Just a tick of 1 or 2% up or down will make a difference in the full thing. Next, please. The final factor is residential development. The city of Beverly Hills is currently in process of updating their general plan. This includes the new regional housing needs assessment guidelines. The RENA guidelines include they're about approximately 3,100 new moderate to low income housing. Now that is a problem in your district. There's lack of available land. There's lack of developers being able to do that at this point. But it's important to know that the RENA is not a quota or a mandate. It is a very strong suggestion, let's say. And the cities, the municipalities have to be required to have their planning and zoning framework will allow for that development to happen. The city of Beverly Hills is working towards that to allow that to happen. And the city has to continuously monitor and report their progress back to the organization the RENA organization. So again, this is what can happen, is what's being tried to happen, but with the lack of available land and the amount of time it takes to get something from the planning stage to the actual build, we don't have any of these units in this forecast. We have a policy that we only include units in the forecast that have at least been in the initial tentative plan stage, that have been submitted to the city. The only thing we have submitted to the city is about 303 units of multi-family units in the One Beverly Hilton development. So that's in the forecast, those units. Excuse me. Excuse me. Next slide, please. So with all of these factors in there, looking at your TK-12 enrollment, you've got your last 3 years. We've declined about 600 students TK-12 over the last 3 years, about 15%. We see that decline continuing, more so in the upper grades than in the lower grades. We have that at about a 2.5% annual decline in the district, and declining, until about another 500 or 600 students over the next 7 years at the current trends. Of course, the further you go out, the forecasts get a little bit fuzzier. But with everything we have, the factors, we're still pointing at, there's nothing really showing a change in the trend that's been happening of those year after year decline. So I want to go a little bit more into what we see declining, because again, you do have some positives, but there's also some negatives that are going against that. And let's look at this next slide, please. Now, the reason why we have this colorful slide here is just to help illustrate that not only are there some negatives that are happening, like the smaller kindergarten class, but that there also seems to have been a bubble that has gone through the district and graduated out. So I'm going to have you look at year 2015. This is the number of resident students. So I'm only looking at the students living inside the district boundaries. In 2015, we go all the way down to grade 12. There's 377 students. That 377 students would graduate out. The next year, in 2016, you've got 188 students that came in. That's 191 students, or 189 students less than what you graduated out. Just a natural progression of that is make you decline just from doing that. You can see in the green, they're all in the low 200s. In the orange, they're in the mid to high 200s. And in the blue, they're in the 300s. Well, as these smaller grades continuing to build up, that 188 students if we follow that down to this year, is only at 196. And last year was only at 205. We can see that those smaller grades are not gaining. They're gaining students from your mobility, but they're not gaining enough to make up for those 377, the 359, the 365 to graduate out. By the time we get to this year from 215, you had 5 or 6 grades in the over 300. In 2020, you only have 1 or 2 grades over 300. You had no grades in 2015 less than 200. You've got 4 or 5 grades in 2020 less than 200. So it's just a natural progression of students graduating out, less births in the area, and then a mobility that continues to gain students, but just not being able to replace as those bubble moves through. So please, the next slide, please. So change topics a little bit here. One of the other things that we look at is a student transfer study. This is important because, again, not necessarily the area demographics are shown by the enrollment in a school. So I'm going to first ask you to look at the columns for enrollment, Hawthorne K-5 and Horace Mann K-5. You can see there's only a 55 student difference between the two with total enrollment. 555 at Hawthorne, 610 at Horace Mann, 55 student difference. If we look at the rows for the school of residence, you can see there's a 300 student difference between the number of students that live there. 195 students that live in Horace Mann are going to Hawthorne. So even though if you're looking at things and trying to see where programs are, facilities need to be, it's important to look at the number of students living in an area as not as much as residing in an area. So that's why there's that difference. There can be that disconnect. Next slide, please. So one of the other things we do is we look at what we call capture rate analysis. I get the attendance areas of your district and I overlay them onto a third-party census information. This is 2020 estimated census. The census isn't out yet. That will be probably in June and July when the updated census data, but this is estimated by a third party called Esri. And what I'm doing here is looking at the number of estimated school age population, age 4 to 17, versus the number of students that are actually in one of your schools. So in Hawthorne, you've got a difference of 2,366 estimated population and a number of 1,321 TK-12 students actually going to one of your schools. They don't necessarily go to Hawthorne because it's TK-12, 56% of the population. Overall, between the two, you've got 69% of the population being captured. About 1,400 students out there that are not going to one of your schools. Excuse me. Looking at this, we did this in 2017, 18, 19, 20, and 2021. You were at 76% and 75%. And now you're at 69%. And I think that 69% is low. Again, we're going to blame the pandemic on that. We probably should have 40 or 50 to 60 more kindergartners and probably others in the other grades. So that would have raised it. So you're still 70 to 75%, I would say, of capturing those students. Still over 1,000 potential students out there, but you have a wealth of other opportunities and potential educational opportunities within the district. One last one, or the next one, please. So using that same data and that same company, again, this independent of us, I like to always verify what I'm getting to another company. So this is showing you your approximately school age population again. A census 2010, that's a real number. The census 2019, they don't have the 2020 information that I can use yet. That is an estimated population, and then 2024 is a forecasted population. You can see the age 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and 15 to 19 are much higher in 2010 than they are in 2019. And then you look in the upper grades, just like I mentioned, we're showing the 10 to 14 or 10 to 19 range going down. You can see that is also happening in this forecast. Again, this is an independent, completely independent from our forecasting. So it's confirming what our demographics are coming up with, what our models coming up with. Another population, another firm is also getting something very similar to that, looking at the overall population. Next slide, please. So some things that I observed, want to just, again, these are the main points here. The average births in the area have dropped by 40 students a year. So that's a good amount. The pandemic has caused the enrollment to decline. We made some adjustments to the forecast model. Mobility is positive in the majority of the district, but the rates have decreased slightly from the 2017-18 study, but you're still getting more students in than are leaving. The 303 planned residential units are in the city, are in the projection. And the resident TK-12 population, we're still expecting to decline over the next 7 years at about the same rate, maybe a little bit less rate. The large upper grades are graduating out, replaced by smaller K enrollment. And you're capturing about 69%. I would say it's really closer to 70 to 75% of your school age population. We have this data. So with that, I'd like to leave it open to any questions you have.
Thank you for that report and update. We'll go to Student Board Member Mr. Kashayan. Do you have any questions or comments?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Margot.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. I guess my question or concern at this point would be the planned, development. City is discussing mixed overlay zones and how they are going to move forward with those housing needs. I doubt that the One Beverly project would be supplying a lot of students. I don't think a lot are going to come out of that 300. But if there is low to moderate housing that is proposed, it would be beneficial for a school district who is in the process of making future plans to understand the when and how that's going to affect us. So I don't, that doesn't fall on you specifically, but I think as a general comment, in the next few years, we have to pay attention to that process as a school board to see what we're going to be doing with our properties. But as you're predicting now, and by the way, I cross-referenced your last report, and the prediction for enrollment was 100 more than it actually is. So from the last demographic study. So that's even, what's that showing me at least is the decline may be even quicker than we're expecting. So we need to really keep a watch on that. What does it tell me also? We have ample facilities for our population. We don't have to worry in the near future about overcrowding. But once again, we have to be cognizant of what the city's going to do and how that will change. There are so many for rent and for sale signs right now in the city. It's going to take a long time, I think, for those numbers to change in a way that impacts our program and our sites. So I appreciate the study once again, continuing to reinforce what we're doing, what we're planning, and how we're moving forward in putting this district together. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Spitz.
I'm struck by the forecast here. It's very alarming because it's come down so far from what it was years ago. And what I see here is a wake-up call for us, because I think that this forecasts a loss of a critical mass of students at the high school and maybe at the middle school. I think that it's a wake-up call for the board and the staff to develop an action plan to reverse the forecast. And I think that by thinking out of the box, there can be a positive impact made. So that's about all I'll say now. But I'm going to say that this is alarming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Walker-Schuman.
I'm going to try and focus on the silver lining, and that is that with fewer students, we have smaller class sizes. So I'm going to try to look at that as positive. Overall, I think, as my colleagues have said, this is definitely something to take note of. My question would be, how many of these 1,400 students that we're not capturing attend non-secular schools? I didn't see that in this report, and I have seen it captured in previous reports. So I don't know if that just didn't make it into the presentation or.
Yeah, actually, I did not do that in this report. I was having trouble getting some of that private school information that we got previously. I think, again, it hasn't been released where I was able to get it, so I didn't put it in this report. But it's something I can actually work on and try to give it to you subsequently. I remember last time from last report, it was about 1,000, I believe, in the area. If I looked at what was inside the district and then a mile radius, I think it was around 1,000.
So I think that's something to pay attention to as well. I think that families that opt for non-secular education are not likely to be families that we will have a high ability to recapture. They're sending their kids to school for religious education for a reason, which makes me feel a little bit better about the 400 odd remaining students being able to work on trying to recapture those. Feels a little bit not as intimidating of a lift. And maybe we can be a little more focused in our efforts to do that. But that was really the only question that I have. But I want to make sure that in times like this, when we already are up against so many challenges, that we try to just keep in mind the silver linings. And we found a lot of them during the pandemic in terms of getting all of the teachers on board with using devices, and all of the students getting all their devices. So I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this actually gives something to us that a lot of parents and a lot of folks have been hoping for, and that is smaller class sizes. So I'll end with that.
Mrs. Marcus.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you. They're a very complete and very unbelievable report. I mean, it's amazing that the numbers and everything, and it is very revealing, and it's quite known that not only is the birth rate dropping, but the number of students are getting less. I think this is going to play a big role in the staffing that we will have in the coming years, and planning ahead with what we need for staffing. There was one thought that I was toying with the idea. There's a lot of maybe positives and negatives, and that is the idea of maybe bringing back the legacy plan that we once had, where we might be able to capture some students from that might want to come here because their parents or their grandparents still live here. And that was something that has been approached to me, and had during the campaign, when some people asked me about it. I will be unable to talk about it because I'd have to recuse myself. I would be eligible. Whether the kids would do it or not, I don't know. But that would be one way of maybe capturing some students and increasing the enrollment a little bit, if that's what we desire. Again, that presents a problem because of the number of dollars we have and the number of students and the way it gets divided. Bringing in new students does not bring in new dollars. So I just want to tell you that it is alarming, and it is very, I don't see how in the future we can bring in, but I'd like to say that what I saw tonight in the way of what's happening in the schools and what we can present as a program for what we present to the students might be somewhat of an enticement to keep people to bring their kids to the school. So by having a great school with great faculties and great programs and great instructors and instruction, I think that maybe we can try to recapture some of the students that we have lost to the secular school. So that would be some of my thoughts. And again, thank you for a very, very comprehensive report.
You're welcome.
I think page 11 was the most, that brought real focus to the presentation that was shared with us tonight. And that, and I'm not sure if we can bring it up, Mrs. Starkins, but it's shocking that in 2018, we had, I think the numbers just by memory, by looking at them, because I don't have them in front of me, was over about 3,700. And I think in 6 years from now, 6 years from 2018, that projection is 2,700. So it's just, about 1,000 less than it was in 2018. That is very striking to see. And I agree with everything that's been said. The only thing I did want to make clear is that our class size is guided by our agreements with that we have, and so we have class size set for every grade. So I disagree that smaller population would mean smaller class sizes. I think that's something that a discussion for the future board can have. Right now, we already have those targets based on agreements that we've solidified. So I think that, as Mrs. Marcus has said, this would probably, if this continues, it would probably be a staffing issue going forward that would need to be considered. And so I think that this is really, I agree with Mr. Margot's comments. I think that the projections that were shared with us I think 2 years ago were slightly more positive. And I know that we have the COVID situation that perhaps has very well contributed to these lower numbers that we're seeing tonight, but it's something to watch. Thank you for the presentation.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Thank you, Scott. Is there any base knowledge about the state of California, or at least the LA County area, about this, birth rates dropping in certain areas? Are people moving out of California? There's talk of all that, which makes the housing requirements, very questionable. But I'm just wondering how California is faring overall, or how the county is faring, and if you have any of that information.
Yes, specifically the county is declining. I currently work 7 districts in LA County. All of them are having declining births. I'm having the same conversation with their boards along the way. This is something that's been happening for years now. It's a combination of high housing prices, because you don't get younger families in there. It's a combination of that, of a different set of values. People are having kids later in life. So we have a group, everybody likes to blame millennials for everything, but we have a group that are not having kids in that normal 25 to 35 range. They're doing it from 30 to 45 or something like that. So you have all those factors. And then we have a lot of young people cannot afford to be in California.
Right.
The ones that are having kids are having to move out of state or further inland. So yes, we've got a combination of factors. This is happening specifically in the Southern California area, LA area. It's also a little bit outside the state, through the entire state.
Thank you for sharing that, because
I have a follow-up.
People should know that it's not exclusive to us. What's going on in our city is not exclusive to us. There may be some different outlying reasons why certain people aren't attending our schools, but there's this general decline in Southern California that everybody is finding. So everybody 100%. Thank you.
I had a follow-up question to Mr. Margot's question for you, Scott. Could you tell me, of those 6 or 7 districts that you said you're having similar conversations with, are those districts similar, socially, economically speaking, compared to Beverly Hills Unified?
Somewhat, not much. There's 1 or 2 that are but not, well, I would say the only one that's really somewhat similar is Arcadia Unified, and it's fine with me discussing that. But I have a Covina Valley, I have Pasadena, which is completely a different demographic there. Arcadia is more, a little bit more affluent. I believe it's basic aid also. So that's the really different. Those you are my only two basic aid districts, and the difference. But again, it's happening in San Gabriel Valley. It's happening up LA Unified. It's happening in almost every single district I work with.
Thank you. Dr. Breggy had a question.
Thank you. Scott, thanks for the presentation. I think kind of a theme that we've had in the district is doing with our strategic planning and really looking at some forecasting. So these numbers are of particular interest as we're doing a lot of forecasting and planning. The part that's really the most intriguing to me is the private school piece, and we've talked a lot as a cabinet, as a board.
How are you?
I want to try to get the numbers and find out, instead of just some generalizations of the people making claims that people are choosing private school over BHUSD. And I just want to, as we go forward, I want to work a little closer with you and Wade so that I can be part of that process, because those numbers of determining the number of people that are actually selecting school outside of BHUSD, but being in our boundaries is just of particular interest. So I just want to put that out there and let you know how important that is for us. Not only just the numbers, but a follow-up that we're going to do as well, which is more of a way to collect some summative data from some people that are making those decisions. So I just want to put that out there that we're extremely interested in determining who those families are. And then of course, we'll go even a step further and find out why some of those decisions are made.
Yes, and just to follow up on that, Dr. Brady, we think the board has discussed maybe having focus groups to find out why do people leave? Why, as you said, why do they make those decisions? So that's clearly something that I think should happen sooner than later at this point.
I'm curious, briefly, kind of what is the methodology behind, getting that information?
For me, I get it really just from the state of California. There's a private school Department of Ed, a private school directory. I look at the number of enrollment. I don't get specifically that they're coming from, I can only get their absolute total enrollment, not where they're coming from, because any of the private schools won't share that with us. I've had other districts that have a partnership with some of their local private and charter schools that will give me a listing of their student addresses. They won't give me any other information. In that way, I can determine, well, they're coming from these areas or these areas, but that's only on an individual basis. This is really more from public records and from the California Department of Ed, the information I get.
I see Mr. Spitz's hand, and I know that Mr. Seaman would also like to ask a question. So we'll go first, if it's okay with you. Dustin, can we go to Mr. Spitz first and then to you?
Yeah, I just want to say that I can understand that the limited amount of information that you can get from the schools, the private schools. I have long advocated, and I still advocate very strongly, a professional polling of all the residences in Beverly Hills, where you could determine specifically which families have students going to private schools and the grade levels and why they're going to private schools rather than our district. And I think that information is needed and is very, very important for us to get. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman.
Yeah, Scott, thank you so much for the presentation. One of the questions that I do have, and I think that we may have asked this last year, if you look at page 4, which is the way that you kind of use your calculations to determine our projections, and one of the things is the mobility rate between cohorts. And I know that you're taking that percentage kind of in making, I'm going to say, those projections moving forward. One of the things within our district historically was we were a permitted school district up until about 2007, 2008. And just in a 12-year span of education, those students, as you see that percentage of decrease between 2017 and say 2020, most of those kids started to flush out, meaning graduate from our system in that 17, 18, that 18, 19 school year. So does that impact actually those projections, do you think, due to the fact that we did have such a large population of permitted students that were within that system? And so now we're finally at the place where those students are gone. Would that actually skew or change your actual projections?
No, those. What I'm assuming when you're saying permitted, you're talking about in interdistrict transfers. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I'm only looking at students that are living inside the district boundaries. So it's not going to affect it at all at that point. Because I'm looking at students that are living in those attendance areas and inside the district boundaries.
So on chart 11, in 2017, all those students, the 3,700 students, were all Beverly Hills residents, is what I hear you state.
No.
No, this is a total enrollment forecast. This includes the number of students that you have out of district. Let's see, you have approximately right now 165 permitted students. That 3315 includes that 165. What I've done there is I've just added them back into my resident forecast on a straight line basis. So each one of those subsequent years has 165 out of district or inter-district transfer students in them.
Can I say something real quick, please? That's slightly different. We have students who attend because their parents either teach in the district or they work in the city. But what Mr. Seaman is referring to are students who were allowed to attend through a different program through inter-district transfers who are no longer a part of our district. So I think we have two different things and we're calling them the same thing. So we may need to check a little bit of that data.
That's Ms. Chisholm, I apologize, President Hacker, is in 2017. So if 2007, 2008, when we became basic aid and we had removed based off athletic permits or academic permits, some of those students, if they're in the elementary level, would have started to flush out around about our first year in administration, around that 2017 mark. And so that kind of, I just want to make sure we're all aware that that 600 person decrease over maybe the last 3 years' time. We had a huge senior class when we came in administration in 2017, 2018. Yep. And then our senior class is starting to, I'm going to say the word plateau, meaning those classes are coming up. I just wanted to see if in your algorithm or your projections, if that was in the consideration. So we all are aware. That's my only question.
Right. Just so you know, regardless of why they were out of district, whether they were a student, a teacher's son or daughter, or city employees, if they are living outside the district boundaries, they're not in the forecasting factor calculations. However, if you would go to that page 12 of the report, what you will see is in that where I'm showing those 300 student classes and then the smaller and smaller, some of those may be those students that you're talking about. And that's why you went from that 385 students, all of a sudden that graduated out to 188. So it's not in the calculations, and it's not going to affect the forecasts, but it is going to affect the number of students in the last few years. And maybe that is why there were 600 students over the last 3 years, and now it's slowed down a little bit to 700 students over the next 7 years. So that definitely could be, but it's not in the calculation itself.
And I just want to clarify, if I may, I do remember that when, I don't remember exactly the year, but I'm going to say that, you know, Dustin, you just used 2000 or 2009 as a year when the issue of the permits was, you know, the program ended. But I do remember that when it ended, as you said, it didn't just end for everyone who was a permitted student. However, you were allowed to, you were permitted to finish off the school that you were in. So you couldn't grandfather, students couldn't go from like Horseman to the high school. If you were a permit student caught in 4th grade, you were allowed to finish off to 8th grade, but you couldn't go to the high school. Legacy students were different, and they were a very small number. I think it was less than 25 students, but the permit students, so if it was in 2009, those students at the high school would have graduated in 2012. So it would not have affected any projections for anything after 2012. So those students were gone far way before that, you know, 2013 never hit. So that would have been the last graduating class, I think, either 2012 or 2013, depending on whether you use the 2008 or 2009 model, 2009 or 2008 model, but we'd have to go back and check. Does that make sense, Dustin?
It does. And I don't know the actual date of the permit extinction. I'm gonna use that word. I'm associating it with when we made the move to basic aid. So that's my assumption, was the 2008. It might have been a later date, say
right.
2010.
So, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as I said, if they were 9th graders, they would have, in 29, they would have been 2009, 2010, 11, 12. They would have been done with the district then, not in 2013, 14. We would not be capturing any permitted students outside of staffings, you know, children who are students whose parents are staff members. This would be strictly students who were allowed through the permit program as we knew it once to be.
I'd like to circle back to class size for a second, just so that I can explain what it was that I meant by smaller class sizes. If you have 80 kids in 4th grade and the class size is 29 as the max, you can't have 2 class sections of 40 kids each. So you'd have to have 3 sections, which could look like 29, 29, and 22. But as we know, staff doesn't like to overload classes. So that actually equitably distributed would look like 27, 26, 26. So that actually does show a smaller class size when you have less enrollment because of the way that you distribute it across the sections. So I'm aware of the ratios, but when you have fewer students enrolled, they're distributed differently.
And we sometimes have that already happening to certain grades here and there. And I don't know what the number, you know, that brings, as I was listening to this presentation, I was wondering, like, what are our ratios for this year? It'd be interesting to know, just because of the pandemic and how that has influenced those numbers to average out per class ratio. Anybody else from administration who had a question regarding the presentation? Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and I think this was very productive.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade, for putting this together for us. Okay. Sure. Staff presentations. Continuing on with moving on, we have Mr. Blake with us tonight, who is going to give us an update on our construction facilities program.
Do we have to do the consent calendar, or did we change the order around while I was gone?
We, let me just bring it up. I understand that we were doing this presentations first, but hold on, let me just make sure. It's the way the agenda was posted. Hold on.
I think it's consent calendar first.
Yes, I'm sorry. It did not have staff presentation. It did break it up. Yes, the demographic studies went first. Sorry, so you're next. You have to wait. So we'll go to the consent calendar. May I please have a motion? I'd like to pull an item, but go ahead. May I have a motion, please?
What item would you like to pull?
I would.
Did you want to pull?
I'd like to pull the purchase order. That is 10E.
Are there any others that need to be pulled?
I'm not sure. Nobody else? I guess that'll be it.
I will move to approve the consent calendar minus the item 10E.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. So
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase order report, item 10E.
I'll second that. So just in, let me bring it up here for myself, please. Give me a minute. Okay, so just in reviewing the POs, I know that somebody had asked about a $5,000 payment to the Beverly Hills Weekly, and it was suggested that perhaps we should look into the Beverly Press. And staff had responded that this is something that we could look into it. I just want to remind everybody that there are only 2 newspapers in the city of Beverly Hills that are adjudicated, and that is the Beverly Hills Weekly and the Courier at this time. That's not to say that that won't change, but legal notices must be published in an adjudicated newspaper. So I wanted to make that clear for future reference. That is not to say that, you know, we can't take out ads or any of that anything of that nature, but as far as notices, it has to be through adjudicated newspapers. Also, I just wanted to say that I noticed there's a list of purchase orders, and I had asked about this. So the purchase orders, the way they're stipulated right now, it's difficult to tell or to track, you know, how some of these expenses are going to be expended in the future. So what I would suggest is that in the future, that they be a little bit more itemized so that it's more transparent. So rather than lumping a vendor with 5 different things that they're tasked to do, I think it would be helpful to identify the vendor and the specific reason for the change, and the amount for that specific task, the increase or the decrease, and then the net total, as opposed to just lumping several reasons for or tasks, and then we're just given a blank original amount and then a blank net increase. And so it's difficult to if someone asks, well, was that increase for task A or task B, we wouldn't be able to answer that. So I just think that has to be handled a little bit more careful going forward. That's it. Yes, Ms. Marcus.
I'm juggling my life right now, but I had asked, I've been submitted, I had questions written, I didn't get to submit them, I forgot. One of the questions I had was in that same area, and that had to do with the change order for Terry Tao, the $100,000. Is that going to be reimbursed by MTA? Is that an MTA? I wanted to ask that question.
Yes, Mrs. Marcus, thank you for that question. And I did respond back to you. We got that question a little bit late, so we were a little bit late getting it. But yes, so that is that is already covered by those expenses.
Thank you. Okay.
Great, thank you. So we can call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Moving on. We are now moving on. Let's see here. Give me a quick second so I can flip over. Okay. We're going to continue with the superintendent's report. Dr. Breggy.
Thank you, Mrs. I just have a brief update and report for you. I wish it was more positive than what I'm able to share with you. It's very reflective and aligned with what's happening across our state and also the country, globally, in fact. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my computer. I want to just take a moment, because I don't get to do this enough, with our administrative team, who also is working in a dual capacity. As I've mentioned before, many of us have taken on a lot of county health officer type roles in our compliance team. And so this is a team of people that is a collaboration, so that when there are issues and concerns and actual positive cases that are in our community, these people on the team, we have a complete exposure management plan that we follow, the communication that we have with each other, that we also have with our staff, and also our Board of Education. And some of the responsibilities as well lend itself to working with LA County. So it is a lot to take on, and I don't often get the chance to say thank you to our principals, assistant principals, cabinet enough, because it is quite the task to take on when you are beginning an investigation and you start doing contact tracing. And for some of you that are aware of all of the back and forth and all of the contacts that you need to make in getting appropriate, correct contact information for people, and then interviewing and talking with them, it's a very lengthy process. It's an emotional process. And the information is shared with the community as well. And I just want you to know there's an extensive amount of work that's involved in the reporting feature. We have our HIPAA policies and practices and expectations, and we are doing an excellent job of taking care of the reporting that we need to in the most respectful and confidential ways. So our current situation, just this past holiday weekend, was a busy one. We are tracking cases of COVID-19 with staff members, as well as with our community members. We are preparing for increased restrictions to Governor Newsom's Safer at Home order. If you've been watching the news lately, you know that because of this surge, that we believe that those restrictions are coming sooner than later. And so I think people are doing a really good job of balancing how and where they get their information. And the information I'm reporting tonight is not only consistent, but reflective of what you are hearing in the news, as well as throughout the state and also LA County. One of the things that we've talked about from the very beginning is that we are no different than any other county in the nation, other than we have a special title of being the most populous county in the entire nation. Other than that, when you break our county down, we have positive cases, and we have positive cases in Beverly Hills, and we have positive cases in BHUSD. And it was never a matter of not having them. It was when we were going to have them and how we were going to handle them. Some of the metrics that have seemed to not be used and shared in recent weeks has been the hospitalization, number of people in the hospital, the people that are in ICUs. And essentially what we haven't talked about for months is just how overwhelming with the surge the healthcare is taking on with all these additional cases. So it's important to know that the metrics that we have in place right now, some of them that we haven't looked at in the past, we're starting to have to look at again, because what wasn't a problem before is now surfacing to be a problem. So it's more than just the adjusted case rate and the number of new cases per 100,000 people. We are very fortunate that we have a wonderful testing partner. When we're looking at the number one way to manage any transmission or any exposure as soon as possible is through regular testing. And so we're very fortunate that this is something we did early as a school district. I can share with you that I've had conversations with superintendents in the state that are just scrambling, trying to find providers and partnerships to provide COVID-19 testing for their organization. And you've seen the news as well. People are in their cars and they're lined up for 3 hours just trying to get one COVID test. We, on the other hand, have a partnership where we will be having regular testing for our staff. We are very much interested in looking at a possible student program for COVID-19 testing that's still in the works, that we're still working through our legal partnerships to see what is allowed and what would be best practiced and what would be in the best interest of our school district. But we have been assured that we will be able to be treated in a way that we can manage all of our staff. And if we do go the direction of students, that we'll be able to do that as well. And again, our partnership with our unions, we have ongoing conversations. They've really been productive. I can't thank that conversation enough. We met with BHEA again today, and we're really having some wonderful conversations about working together to slow or mitigate the spread as much as possible. And so they have been vital partners in helping us, and we're currently developing language so that we can put into practice a protocol for how we are going to test our employees. So very thankful for that partnership. We've talked before about our thermal temperature scanners. And again, I want to thank the Board of Education for trusting us and allowing some innovation to happen in our schools. People that are bringing back some students in small groups are having to stagger schedules. They're having to have students step up to an iPad, press a button to get a temperature taken, to answer screening information. And so I'm very thankful that we have this opportunity to purchase our thermal temperature scanners, which are top of the line. And they are now set up in our schools. Here's an example of the system that's set up at Horace Mann. And because we do have staff that are back in our schools, they've just been very helpful in providing feedback to us. We're looking at traffic patterns. We're looking at having this located in a place. This happens to be right next to the room where there's an isolation room. So if there is a student with a temperature, this can be done in a way that's very discreet, as any child should be treated. And it's right around the corner. And so the student, rather than being singled out, will be handled in a very sensitive and very kind way, but in a way that will provide us with the highest level of safety and the least amount of exposure to other people, the way that this is set up. And our philosophy has been a really good one. We're educators, and most of us at the cabinet, just teachers and principals, and at the district office now, we're not experts in temperature taking and health screening. So we have a great philosophy. We really reached out for feedback, and staff is providing that for us. And if something isn't exactly the way that we want it to go, we're ready to pivot and change. That happened with our trial testing, which went very well. But based on some feedback, we're making some changes so that it's more comfortable for our staff. There's easier access, but there's also things that we need, like better internet service. So we're making changes, and I'm very thankful that we have a team of people that have, I'll use the example that was used with our students at Hawthorne this morning, or just earlier in the presentation, about having an open mind. And we absolutely do. And so we've learned a lot from each other, and we're not just set in doing something one way and then moving on. We're willing to make those changes and pivot whenever we need to. And it's proved to increase the effectiveness in just about everything that we're doing. Kind of moving on, and I don't want to steal any thunder from Yoni or any other students, but I'm super excited about a long-term project that's been happening in our district with some of our rebranding that we're doing. And so I'm going to come back to COVID in a second, but I just want to let you know that what has happened at the district level through BHEF and the merch that's available on our website is also now through our ASB at the high school. And so by going to shop.bhhs.bhusd.org, we finally have a really it's very innovative, it's very user-friendly, and it's something that people ask me about on a weekly basis is how can I grab a Beverly Hills High School sweatshirt or hoodie for a gift? You know, it's available, it's accessible, it's on our website, and we're super excited about that, as well as a bunch of other new products. So we're super excited to be able to share that. It's super convenient. It's just like Amazon, and we're just very excited about that. It's the time for giving. I'm very fortunate. Mr. Spitz and myself are Rotary members, and we have just such a great partnership. Our school district, there's so many gems in our school district, and there's so many things that we're doing right. And one of them is our community partnerships, which we cherish so often, and especially at these times when we can see our community relationship with the fire department and Rotary and our PTA council, who is taking care of us all the time in all of our schools and bringing us and connecting us with the city. We're working very hard to do that. So we want to thank everyone in the city, in the community, the fire department, Rotary, and especially PTA council for even during a pandemic, reaching out for the kindness of others and then being able to donate and to the Salvation Army Transitional Housing and Foster Children's Resource Center. And of course, we're so indebted to the BHEF. Clearly from the beginning, when I came in the district, that this was an organization that stood behind innovation and partnership. And I'm fortunate to meet with Farah and Chrissy and their wonderful board, because the programs and innovation that they help us with, we would not be able to have without them. As you saw in the very beginning of the board meeting with the PBIS program, and you were able to see how it was customized towards what Hawthorne is doing. One of the most important things about the program is that it isn't a one-size-fits-all. This is a program that is, you know, it's the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And you can see what the Hawthorne staff has done with being able to make this their own. And you can see the type of input that the staff has had and the students have had to change and improve this program. And that's what makes it work. And so we wouldn't have programs like that if it wasn't for BHEF. So just want to give a shout out to them. Today is the day of giving. It's Giving Tuesday. So just a reminder, and I know that everybody's stretched really thin and it's holiday time, but this is a time to reach out to BHEF and our PTAs because we wouldn't be able to do these things without their support. And just another magical thing about our school district, that it's the alumni that come through are just so spectacular. And just through the Biden administration, President-elect Joe Biden, one of his nominees for the Department of Homeland Security is former grad Alejandro Mayorkas. And so that is pretty incredible. And it's my understanding that there are other BHHS grads that are being considered for top positions within this White House and this administration. And that just says so much about the type of education and post-secondary options and experiences that our alumni continue to have. And it's just such a great reflection on our own community. And so I want to end with something that is, very, again, reflective of what's happening. And, I think it's really important that, it's hard to give numbers. It's hard to give data when it's not correct and it changes so quickly. Even the state has changed where we used to get assessed once per week. It would be on Tuesdays where we would be assessed, and they would look at our positivity rate and our adjusted case rate. They've now said that that's not, they're not going to wait a week anymore. The data is changing too quickly. And so the data and that assessment, that tiered assessment that we would wait for on Tuesdays and on board meeting nights, I would give that to you, is now being changed more frequently. And that just goes to show you how things are changing. So I want to let you know that that we were on break. So right before break, and I'll update these figures when I get them. But I want you to know, just in LA County, and again, the most populous county in the entire country, we're dealing with, and this isn't to scare anybody. This isn't to, put anybody off. This is not being defensive. It's really important that, we need to look outside of our school district, outside of our family, outside of our experiences. And so when we look outside, just in looking at LA County in particular, with 246 school buildings have been impacted by COVID-19. Not surprising, but I want to just give you kind of a little bit of a lay of the land as far as how does this impact not only LA County, but then BHUSD. In LA County, and again, this is really the surge was just starting. So these numbers will go up, and I will update those and share those. With 92 student positive cases, when people were saying your students are not getting COVID-19, they are not being exposed, it's just simply not true. I mean, this data is, if anything, this data is low, and I'll tell you why. Many people that aren't being tested that have COVID-19 and have the symptoms, that we don't have that data to report out. But even more importantly than that, if you don't self-report to your school district and then we report to the county, you don't have accurate data. So we do rely on, whether it's LA County, whether it's BHUSD, we really rely on people sharing that information with us. And it's really important that we have that information. And I understand that, for some people, there is possibly a feeling, a negative stigma that is attached to COVID-19. And I'm hoping that we're beyond that. We need real data. We need people to be really upfront with us and to share with us if they have a positive test that is a student or a staff member. And this isn't to criticize, this isn't to judge. This is to ensure that we do our part to make sure that we are not continuing to spread the transmission piece that is controllable. And if you put factors into place, we can help do that. And that is our responsibility to do that. So I understand that it's when we talk to some of our families that they're worried that, that information is going to get out. It's tough for kids. But I want to assure you that the repercussions from not sharing that information are far greater than trying to handle this in-house and in us doing this in a delicate way. The public health order, the way that it's written right now, 3 cases that are in a school will close the school. So you can see that 16 of the schools that were in LA County, again, before the surge, were school districts, are schools that then had to close for 14 days. And so, when you start looking at BHUSD, obviously when you're looking at the numbers, relatively speaking, our numbers are a lot lower and we have a smaller community. But again, when you start to look at this is self-reporting, and that just right at break, right coming back just yesterday, that we're aware of 6 students and their families. So it's a student and either a parent or brother or sister, that have a positive case of COVID-19. And so we have 2 staff cases, and the team that I showed you before, there's a lot of work that goes into that contact tracing. Fortunately, some people were on break, so that puts us in a better position as far as transmission and exposure, because they were on break and not in a public place. that is, in any of our schools, especially for staff. But now that this is what we've talked about for quite some time, the concern was, coming back from break. And this 3-week period is a tough time because of all of the travel, and all of the data is 10 days behind. So this break that we just had, the data coming from that is not reported to the county because of the 10-day lag. So we're going to be well into December, into the second week of December, before we get that Thanksgiving day, that Thanksgiving week, really, that data that's going to be coming from LA County. So I just want to reemphasize that sharing this information with us is critical, and we're thankful of the staff. We do believe that is now 3 staff members, and we want to be really responsive to ensuring that we do what we can to locate the people that were in any way potentially exposed, so that we can start and slow this transmission. So just a couple of things I want to end with that are pretty startling. As I told you, it's not just every Tuesday where we're being assessed. And keep in mind, and I'll kind of close with these 2 slides. If you think about where we're in the purple tier, and even the possibility of being kind of on that monitoring list, where we would have to be for 28 days, moving into red, is being 7 or below for the adjusted cases. So 7 or below. And if you remember, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, there was a time where we dipped right below 7. And we got a little excited because we thought, well, maybe we're on our way to keeping that adjusted case rate below 7. It has to be 7 or below, and we have to stay that way for 28 days to be able to then open in red. So we know that surge has gone up. It was an uptick, and we kept saying it's a little bit of an uptick, kept going up a couple points, and it's just really exploded. And so this is really concerning to us as a school district, but also with as a community as well. And that's why all of the new safer at home ordinances and expectations are going into place. But if you can see on your screen that again, we were looking at 7 or below. It was going up a little bit. Just on the 28th of November, so just a couple of days ago, we were at 19.4. So 19 really the adjusted case rate. And again, we have to be 7 or below. So this is just, it's not even a spike. This is truly a surge. But now with the new procedures where they're not going to wait a week anymore, they waited 2 days, and this just came out right before the board meeting on December 1st, and we are up to 20 for the adjusted case rate. And so it's really concerning. It's really scary. And, we're watching this very, very closely because we're trying to plan as much as we can for a reopening. And we're just looking at right now, possibly taking a step back. I mean, when you start hearing the cases are worse now than they ever have been, then, we have to react. We have to react accordingly. So we're going to be watching really closely to see what happens in the next day or so with Governor Newsom and his plan. And we will, as we have been, very collaborative, and we've been following that public health order, to the T, and we will continue to do that. And it's our job to report that and share that with you. There isn't anybody I know, we did not get into our jobs to continue Zoom school and work remotely. We love working with kids. Our teachers want to be back, but we have to make sure that we do this in a very safe way, in a very controllable way, because what we don't want, and this has been happening in several school districts, is bringing back kids too soon. And think about how confusing this is. And it's so exciting for some kids to be back, even if it's in a hybrid, only to then 2 weeks later turn around and tell a student you're not back anymore. Now you're back to. So I'm going to end with this, and I apologize that went long, and I get kind of emotional about where this is going because I have such huge concern for just the well-being of our students and our staff and our families, that we really do need to take care of one another. We need to remind each other of those basic fundamentals of what we can do to help move this in the right direction. So I understand this is going to create a lot of anxiety in our homes, and our families are going to have to continue to make arrangements as they have. And we're just so fortunate that we have such a strong MOU with our teachers, that our teachers are really on the ball, and we have such a good program in place. And I'm so thankful for that because we do have a solid foundation, even though it's distance learning, it's remote learning, but it is the most solid that I've ever seen in any school district. And I'm always super proud to talk about that when I'm meeting with other superintendents. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Breggy. So we'll go to comments or questions from board members. We'll start with student board member, Mr. Kashanian.
I'd just like to thank Dr. Breggy for the comprehensive report. And yeah, it's pretty heartbreaking to see the rates go up like that, but all we could do at this point is just hope for the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoni.
Okay, Mr. Spitz.
No comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Margo, I skipped you. I apologize.
No, I'm okay. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Barker-Schumann.
No, just thank you for the report.
Okay, and Mrs. Marcus?
Just very disturbing, and hopefully they can start to go the other way without going much higher. I just hope that we can start to go the other way. I'm going to have to leave the meeting within the next few minutes, but I'm sorry, but it's an emergency. So
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus, for being with us tonight, and have a good evening. Thank you for the report, Dr. Breggy. I appreciate the information fresh off the press, as they say, and I hope that our parent population, of course, is listening because, of course, this impacts our students the most. And while it's unfortunate information to share, it's what's going on. So I'm glad that we're on top of it and that we were able to communicate that with everyone tonight. Okay, so we are going to move on to now we have our construction update from Mr. Blake.
Do you have it, Rebecca? Well, thank you, President Hacker and members of the board. An opportunity to brief you on the current status of B3, B4. But before I move into it, I understand I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to make a lot of stuff in the 10 minutes. So there's some information on the slides. I'm not obviously going to read them to you, but that will be a leave behind for information, but I'll tell the story of those details. So before we begin, I want to take a minute to describe two things. And it's what we deal with in the construction program. One is, what is the condition of the buildings and what is the condition of the drawings, and how does that impact a schedule, and how does that impact money? Then the other piece that we work with is the program. And the program that we use, we call it leaseback, but what it really is a methodology for, yes?
Is there any way to make that slightly bigger? It's difficult to see. I'm sorry, Mrs. Sarkins. Is there a way you can make that slide bigger? There, maybe better.
Does that work?
Not really, actually. I mean, the slide got bigger, but it's the lettering. The font is so small.
Hold on, let's try this.
Thank you. Yeah, there you go. That's much better. Much better.
Okay, and just let me know slide by slide.
Okay. So before I get into this piece, it's just a high level. Let me give you a high level information. Number one, high level information I wanted to share is, as of this morning, there are no oil derricks on the high school property. That is a milestone. I cannot tell you how happy we are.
Can you say that again, just in case anyone missed that?
And I think Rebecca, I'll share with her a press release. As of this morning, there are no oil well derricks on the high school property.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so Veneco.
So we're moving out of the energy sector into education again.
Well, it's part of the kind of stuff with this construction stuff, but it's pretty cool. So that's important. The other piece is that when we look at, I know this is about B3, B4, and there's details I'll get to, but we look at B1, B2, B3, B4 as one project. The only difference is between the two is the start dates that come from the approved DSA drawings. They came out at different times, B1, B2, and B3, B4. But in terms of program, in terms of how we do this, it's really one project. So let me start a little bit of information with B1, and then I'll move to B3 so we have a bigger context. One is, what is the condition? What are we dealing with in these buildings, and how does that affect schedule? And what are we dealing with the buildings as it affects program in terms of money? Okay, so B1, B2. B1 will be delivered substantial completion by the end of this month. That will be delivered 4 months ahead of schedule. B2 will be delivered, we think, as a little more, because we cross over between B2 and B3. That should be completed by the end of February. So that's going to be 2 months ahead of schedule. What I mean by schedule is when we put together the GMAX and we are able to negotiate with the subcontractor base for price and for schedule. As we go through this program, what we've yielded is a couple things out of B1 that's going to move over to B3, B4. B1 and B2, the condition of the building was some hazmat was done and some demolition was done. However, the drawings that we have that went to DSA, that was approved by DSA for B1, B2, and B3, B4 were designed from as-built drawings from the 1920s and the 1930s. So what we knew and we anticipated and we planned for, programmatically, we planned for the fact that when we pull off the plaster and we see the walls, then we're going to see big holes in the concrete. And we begin to discover how decayed the exterior walls are and the interior walls are. So as we discover that, we have a DSA approved set of drawings, we now have to do what's called a CCD. That's a construction change document, which is a DSA document. What it means is here's a problem, we dig up a footing. The footing is supposed to be 2 feet. Excuse me, it's supposed to be 4 feet. We dig it up, it's 1 foot. And so the structural engineer now has to calculate what the fix is to increase it, say, to 4 feet. That's fine. We planned for those things. We had 10,000 line items on B1, B2 that we identified as potential scope gaps or risks that we don't have documentation for. 10,000 line items on just B1, B2. So as we plan for it, so as we get into it, we start pulling all this stuff off. Now we have to go back to DSA and get an approval for that CCD. It's like submitting again. Normally, I expect on a DSA project, last couple of performing arts centers we completed, I had 3 CCDs through both 2 performing arts centers. What we're dealing with here is about 460 CCDs between B1, B2, and B3, B4, and we're not complete in B3, B4. That's extremely unusual. What that means in real life, and again, I'm talking about the building, what is the conditions in the building, and what is that? How does that affect schedule? To develop production in B1 and B2, we had estimated about a certain period of time for the concrete and the structural work. As we began to go into it, we're now repairing the exterior walls and building a wall against full height from footings to the roof, full height walls in front of the exterior brick. So that's obviously more expensive and requires more DSA approval. And again, we planned for that eventuality best we could. So B1, B2, we slipped, if we want to use that word, what we anticipated for durations in the concrete, big piles, about 8 months on schedule. So normally in a normal traditional project, if you have an 8-month slippage in schedule, then the low bid contractor sticks that on the end and you pay for the general conditions. That's called a change order. In this program, again, what is a condition? How do we address it? And how does the program work? And what is the current outcome? The current outcome for B1, B2 is we have picked up and accelerated that 8 months of time that was longer than we anticipated, and worked in other areas of the building. And because we have negotiated contracts, we were able to direct subcontractors. So as we are today on B1, B2, we're ahead of schedule. We made up to 8 months and we're ahead of schedule. Number two, we are currently sitting on an amount of money in the GMAX. We have not touched the contractor's contingency, and we have not touched the district's contingency. What we have currently is a $6 million cost savings as of today. So that's how the program addresses and mitigates the risk by pre-construction services. That's kind of the secret sauce. The pre-construction services identify scope gaps in very complicated projects. We identify them, we put costs against them, and that's what we manage. On B1, B2, we planned for the problem, we executed the problem. Now that, when I say cost savings, that's an amount of $6 million that will come back to the school district. So what we'll be doing, because we have B1, B2 is the contract, and B3, B4 is an addendum to that contract, that $6 million will move over to B3, B4. So the second piece of information about how we run this program money-wise is currently the state allocation board, through the excellent efforts of our team, and particularly Bill Savage. We have at the state allocation board a number on our queue for a reimbursement from the state allocation board for $18 million for the seismic work. That decision will be in front of the state allocation board in January. So as we're moving through this program, where we can manage that risk and mitigate that risk, then there's a benefit to the district and a benefit to the contractor. Now, I'm going to move into B3, B4. What you see in front of you is a summary schedule. And the reason why it's a summary schedule is I don't have there's some things I have end dates on, but I don't have end dates, and it looks like it's going out into it forever. Please, that's not what it means. It means I don't have an end date for that bar. And the reason is we have two what we call them PM partial GMAXs, and that's how we've been executing this. And they have to do with primarily some site concrete and utilities. And the reason why we're taking the savings from B1, B2 and moving it to B3, B4 is because we have some scopes that the board had directed early on B3, B4 into theaters. And it came from the previous board attending a performing arts center in Calabasas in Las Virgenes School District. And the result of that was direction to be sure that in the theater areas, am I going past 10? Oh my gosh. Am I past 10 yet?
It's okay, you're fine.
Okay. So what we did in the design phase, we call them, there's packages that were put together by the design team and a gentleman named Jeff Wachtel. And Jeff Wachtel was the theater manager at UCLA for years. He's retired. And I've used Jeff every performing arts center I've been involved in. And his expertise from UCLA is he takes the students coming in from high school to his program. And so he's very clear about what he would, if possible, to see what kind of robust theater program that the students have access to. It's not just plays and musicals, it's the operations and the utility of the theater components. So the direction was make sure we have a robust opportunity for the theater educational program. And number two, that because of the uniqueness of Beverly Hills, to be sure that we take consideration for how those spaces could be competitive in the area, in the market we're in today. So those two things have yielded some changes that we've put into the buildings to accommodate those kinds of things. And so that particular budget and that estimate is how we're going to use, if you will, the cost savings from B1, B2. And if we can do that, then and I can accomplish all this, then the only thing that's left is the final GMP for the site work and the site utilities. Once those are all completed, then we can put a date on, because they'll all be bid out. Once we have all of that information, then we put the end dates based on durations that we've agreed to and we've negotiated with the subcontractor base. So that's the thing here that's relevant to look at is the DSA approved. You can see the dates when things were approved. If you could slide back a little bit, thank you. I think the story here is that the difference between B3, B4, and B1, B2, in B3, B4, there was no hazmat mitigation and there was no demolition. So when we entered into B3, B4, it was, we're going to find out. And as we found out, I think some of you have taken the tours at different times where you've been able to see the extent of the decay in the concrete. Well, the same thing has happened here. And if we want to go to the next slide for me, please. So I'm not going to read all this. This is just sort of, these are the things that we've been dealing with as it relates to the condition of the building. And what it all means is, as we discover what we're doing, again, we have to write, the architect writes a CCD. Interesting thing about a CCD when it's structural, if it's architectural, you just move a line on the drawings, like put a wall, move a wall or a door. But with structural, the structural engineer has to redo the structural calculations. So what would otherwise be, let's say, 2 days, to produce it and ship it off to DSA, it could be there up to 3 months, 4 months. And when that happens, just so we're all clear about how the program goes, more than 50% of the CCDs that go to DSA, and we don't have approval, we don't have them, but more than half of the times, the contractor has taken the risk to go ahead and move forward with that production. If we were to wait until all of this information, first we have to demo it and look at it, then you have to redesign it, get it to DSA, get it approved, then the schedule, it would be unacceptable to schedule. So the contractor executes a number of these that we feel and the architect feels and the DSA inspector feels that it's a good risk, then he'll build it and go forward at risk. So that's the conditions that are true in the building that we're dealing with. And then what's the program that we use to mitigate it? In a typical construction program, you have a schedule that has a beginning date and a proposed finish date, right? In the GMAX, which would be Pro West, has bought the drawings. When they sign the GMAX, they're responsible for the conditions of the drawings. They're responsible for the price, and they're responsible for the schedule. So it doesn't, in this model, to work through delay claims with the subs or delay claims with Pro West, because all of these issues of delay claims are off the table. So what we're doing is processing submittals, shop drawings, CCDs, and RFIs. What that means is initially the subcontractor does a shop drawing and does submittals. And as we go through this, RFIs and the CCDs, RFIs are request for information, changes it. And now they have to resubmit. So that resubmittal process, it's very difficult to develop a production sequencing. And specifically, we're talking about the structural, okay? Once you get into the structural walls are done and you're putting sheetrock on and you're doing the rest of the scopes, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, then you can make up that schedule, and we've been able to do that. So on B3, B4, really the story here that is the tower on B3. The drawings were the as-built drawings on that tower. Well, when we pulled off the roof to look at the framing, I don't know if any of you at your home has ever had dry rot in wood framing. We don't even understand why it was standing. All the wood was dry rotted, some of it almost completely through. So as we open up that, then we redesign, go to DSA, get the numbers, and then we're moving. So we use that framer in other areas. In the tower, when we did the demo, nothing that was on the original drawings matched what was in the building. The structural steel, the connections for all the structural steel, everything. So we had to redesign it and get it resubmitted to DSA, work with the subcontractors, because they can't do the work unless they do a submittal and a shop drawing that's approved by the DSA inspector. So those are the things we deal with in these buildings where a seismic retrofit is really the project. That's the project in these buildings. The buildings are decayed more than anything I've ever seen or imagined. And in order to repair that decay, you don't discover it until you do the demo in the hazmat. So, this is the workflow that's out ahead of us. And if you want to go to the next page, please. Okay, this is similar. These are the conditions. So it's a picture of giving you, what are we dealing with in the building, right? And what did we do in the program that mitigates that from the standpoint of time or the standpoint of money? The only way we've been able to mitigate it is we plan for it. So while that tower is giving us probably 2 months that was not planned in the duration, we planned for it. We didn't want it, but we planned for it. So that's how this program is working in B1, B2, and B3, and B4. Where we are today, I'm happy with the schedule. We have challenges. We have challenges every day, but the way the program is working and the contractors and subcontractors are working, the flow of work, that's why we call it a flow summary. The issue, if you're doing a GMAX, yes, we use a CPM schedule, but really how we do this is by developing the flow of work. And we collaboratively work with that, with the A&E team, with our team, and with Pro West team and the subs. So we develop, what I mean by develop flow, we have to get into areas that have been exposed, write the documents, get it to the architect, get it engineered, get it to DSA, and get it back before we can touch it. So that's what I mean by we're focusing on those things to advance the flow. So it's never was simply, okay, you guys dig a hole and put the concrete and rebar in. Okay, that's done. We go to the next thing. The good news about all this is that as we're going forward with this piece of the puzzle, and if it's, when there's a resolution we may talk about later in this meeting, has to do with pre-construction services that's tied to a schedule, a master schedule that was presented to the board in November of last year, that's advancing. So while we are delivering so far the projects ahead of schedule, we've also been advancing the site work in Building C and all of that work by 2 years. So that's the 10 minute, here's where we are.
Thank you for that, Mr. Blake. I think that was very helpful and very informative. And we'll start with questions or any comments if anyone has. We'll go to Student Board Member Mr. Kashanian first.
No comments, but thank you, Mr. Blake.
You're welcome.
Mr. Margot. Mr. Margot, do you have any questions? I didn't hear you.
No questions. Thank you, Don. Hopefully people will rewind this and pay attention and play it back and get an idea of exactly how the program is working. It provided a lot of transparency tonight. So thank you. What does SOG stand for?
Slab on grade.
Thank you.
Mr. Spitz?
Well, I want to thank Don for the presentation, and I must say that staying on top of all of this is absolutely amazing, and I really respect Don tremendously for his ability to do that. It's really amazing. When I think about all that has had to be done with these old buildings, if we had known originally what we were up against, Don, would we have torn them down or rebuilt them?
Absolutely. Without question, with no hesitation. However, the assignment is to deliver it nonetheless.
But I think that this has added some little bit of white to your beard. Thanks a million.
You're
Thank
welcome.
Thank you so much for shedding so much information on this, on the progress of our construction efforts here at Beverly Hills. Oh, I'm so sorry. This is Walker Schuman.
Don, thank you so much for the very detailed review. I think people don't realize sometimes how much detailed work goes into the stuff that's happening here. It's very easy to just see it from the street and go, oh, nothing's happening because you can't really see it, or there's just a few guys or something happening on the roof. But when you actually pull the curtain back and look at all of the different details and layers of what's going on, it's really quite astonishing. It's an unbelievable undertaking, and you have managed it really really well. So I think it's important to recognize that. And, there's a lot of other people also that kind of help out behind the scenes. There's the CCAC, there's the CBOC, lots of different groups of people that really play a significant role in making sure that all of this stuff goes off without a hitch, and that we're able to have accomplishments like delivering 4 months early and $6 million to the good, which, by the way, in case somebody didn't hear that at the beginning, 4 months early and $6 million under budget at the moment, and no active oil rigs on the campus anymore. So in case anyone was thinking we were going to forget all those really, really monumental successes, I just wanted to repeat that. So thanks for your dedication to this project and moving it forward, and for always being available to answer the questions. Really appreciate it.
As you know, I could not have done this. You know that the team that's behind me is a stellar team, and ProWest has turned into, as we've worked through this, absolutely the company that we need to do this.
Yeah, and I want to shout out to Sierra Michelson. I know she's here on the call. She stays quiet a lot of the time, but is just an absolute rock star in this project too. So thank you, Sierra.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so thank you again. As I was saying, I did have a question. So when you said that those there was $6 million of savings on B1, B2, and that's going to be forwarded over to B3, B4. How are we doing with B3 and B4 as far as our budget, and what was budgeted when the project was kind of drawn up and thought of, and where are we at today with all of these findings and surprises that we've identified that you spoke of that have made the project a little bit more challenging?
As you recall, Randy Craig and I put together a workshop for the board, and we do that for you each time that there's a decision to make regarding what is the cost and how did we get here. And as you recall, in that meeting, we went from a number 45 million at some point in time, and then how did we get here? How is it possible that it could cost what we're being confronted with? And in that workshop, we were just a reminder that the difference between what was presented originally was a program budget. It wasn't even a drawing. It wasn't even an engineered number. It was just a program number. And as we went forward, there were as you've heard me say before, Ms. Hacker, there are exits on the freeway. And sometimes they get used and sometimes they don't. And there were exits on the freeway that would say, it's supposed to be sprinklers, a sprinkler system and paint. And we go from sprinkler systems and paint to a full-blown AB300 seismic retrofit. Well, that was a process that developed along the way through the development of drawings, number one. Number two, DSA made it clear that if you're going to touch the building, you will do an AB300 full seismic retrofit, just like B1, B2. So that triggered then all of this seismic retrofit work. And so as we progressed through that, we presented some numbers that we believed to be B3, B4 as the final numbers pending the final documents in the bid process for the last GMP. We're on that same track. We haven't deviated. There's been no change. The issue has been, explaining today, is what do we deal with in the building and how's that work? And then how does the program deal with schedule and money? And I can respond with, nothing has changed from that workshop. We're still on that track.
Okay, so the $6 million savings, though, from B1, B2, I would assume are going to be very helpful in completing this other piece of the project.
As what we call enhancements to the theaters for robust program and for capacity for competition for those spaces publicly. There's some things that we looked at and we thought we probably need to bring it back to you to decide. Example is we proposed a very large structural member in front of the stage with lights, okay? And would that be needed programmatically? Well, you could argue that we've added some more lights further back of house, but usually if you're competing for a professional troupe, then you want that front lighting array by the front of the stage. So that one we looked at, we had designed it, we had some estimates, and we looked at that could be as much as 2 million just for that light array. So we thought we'd probably bring it back to you to say, well, do you want to invest $2 million in the potential to use the space for rentals? I can tell you that the two performing arts centers, the one that you saw in Calabasas, the other one in Agoura, are 365 days a year used. So I think that you have the potential here for that program to work, and you have the parking, which most people don't. So I think we intended to bring back to you that particular piece of it to see, that should be a choice you probably want to make. And I still can do that. But what I would like to do is, we have time, what I'd like to do is complete B1, B2, and then look at, what's that capital resource, and do we want to deploy that into that particular feature?
Got it. Thank you so much, Mr. Blake, for that explanation. I appreciate that, really. Thank you. Okay, any further questions before we move on with our agenda? Thank you again for being with us tonight. We're going to move forward with our student board members.
Campus are set up in a way that tests are heavily weighted, while other areas such as participation and homework are not as weighted as they used to be when we were in school. This can take a huge toll on students who are in classes that only have 3 or 4 tests in a semester. Also, many teachers are giving tests on the same days and/or in the same week. It feels like there are 1 to 2 lighter weeks, and then almost all teachers give tests in the same week. For example, this week, I and many other seniors have a test in every single one of our academic classes. I suggest that we make a calendar that all teachers can look at in order to see which classes are giving tests on which days, and so that they could input their own test days. This way, teachers of seniors, for example, can at least try not to give tests on the same days and/or weeks if a week is already jam-packed. I know that this has been brought up in the past, but no action has been taken. Next, for the past 3 weeks, I've been hearing from and encountering many fatigued and apathetic students and teachers, and I think it's partly due to our schedule. Therefore, I'm currently working on a schedule proposal for second semester that I'll present to Mr. Mead as soon as it is finished. Other than this, I'd like to wish all the seniors good luck as we are applying to college. All the hard work is finally paying off as we take the last strides to the finish line. So let's finish our application strong. Also, for those who haven't heard, Cal State just extended their application deadline to December 15th, and the UCs have extended their deadline to this Friday. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gashalian, for that. Any questions for our student board member?
I don't have any questions, but I actually do, and I'm glad you brought it up. The grading issue, I think, is very different across the board at the different grade levels and the different departments and then the different schools. And it is, I mean, look, I've got kids across several of those things, and it's very, very difficult. I don't have a solution, but I thank you for bringing it up, and I think it's something we should think about. I know there are restrictions that the teachers have a certain degree of control of their grading and everything else, but I just want to recognize, I know a lot of our students right now are experiencing some difficulty in that area. So thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to educational services.
There is
on the agenda.
Yep, it was just removed.
The placeholder. Okay, great. Thank you. Just give me a minute here. Okay, so we are moving to make a motion to approve BHEA's an MOU addendum number 3, return of the athletic program and coaches. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, any questions from the board?
I do have questions.
Please.
Do we want to go in the circle? Noah?
Yeah, I just had asked about the, it mentions the pool in there. And I was just wondering how the county is dealing with pools and inside spaces right now because, well, one, when nobody's using our pool at the moment, and the way things are going, I don't think they're going to. So do we delineate from those two separately, or they're putting those both together as just an inside space?
Mr. Ellis, do you want to respond to that question?
Yeah, the swimming pool right now is obviously under construction, and the county has no indoor swimming facilities are allowed at this point in time.
Okay.
So that was probably, I think when I answered that question, that was in the phase 3 for us athletically opening up, that we'd hope we can get back indoors to the swimming pools and the gyms, because of right now, there are no indoor facilities that we are allowed to use.
Is the county allowing outdoor pools at the moment?
No, they just shut them down in the new order that just came out this weekend on November, whatever it was, 28th. They've shut down all outside pools except.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Spitz, any questions from you?
Yeah, last week the county came out with new restrictions on group gatherings, and I'm wondering whether this plan here and addendum, whether this meets those restrictions.
Yes, we're fine in terms of that. Any existing program that we have, we can continue on. So that's why we're still with our phase 1 and our groups of 12 cohorts and 1 coach working out twice a week. And so we are well within their guidelines in terms of that.
Great, thank you.
We'll say, Mr. Spitz, that's an excellent point, because while this is part of the philosophy of LA County to bring in small groups so that we can manage and control those in a very small section, we know that with the recent news, this may change. So we are following the health order as we are prescribed right now, but we're also getting ready just in case we need to make some alterations.
And we're also at this point in time not looking to move forward into a different phase. We're trying to keep everything as we have started and within the guidelines of the LA County Department of Public Health orders.
And there are some discussions too, and of course, Mr. Ellis keeps me really informed. Every day things are changing so quickly, you just athletically and with the organizations that support our student athletes, that there's even some discussion about canceling upcoming seasons. So it's really disappointing and disheartening as this continues, but we're as soon as we know that information, we'll share it, but we're getting geared up for some definite changes.
About 2 hours before this meeting, the CIF state came out and they canceled all of their state playoffs for the season. So there will be no state playoffs for this year. So their philosophy is they wanted to create more time for kids to be able to participate in sports. And so they eliminated that whole state playoff program. So which is going to give us an extra 4 weeks, hopefully, that we can push back. Now, the Southern section hasn't sent out a note today following that, and they're trying to stay firm with what they put out in July. So we're waiting for that to all happen as well.
Okay, thank you, Mrs.
Segues perfectly into
Schuman.
My questions. The email that I got said that they delayed the start of high school sports as well. The CIF state delayed the start of high school sports. So I guess my question is, in this MOU, it clearly addresses in phase 1 varsity sports and in cohorts of 12. But phase 2 was the one that includes JV sports. So are we saying that we won't have any plan for any of the JV student athletes to return to sports until we decide phase 2? And what is it that puts us into phase 2 versus phase 1?
Phase 2 would be the county we would probably have to move, in my understanding, we would move from the purple tier into the red tier, which would allow us to then have more cohort groups on the field at the same time with more coaches. And so that's where we're at right now. And so we're in the order that you read also, the state took boys volleyball and moved it to the springtime as opposed to the wintertime. But the CIF Southern section hasn't done that yet. So there's some controversy between the two entities right now. And I'm thinking the CIF state would trump the Southern section. So what we're doing right now is just waiting to see what's going to happen. And I'm assuming, and I told the coaches in an email today, that don't be surprised if in the next 3 days, everything gets shut down and we'll be back to ground zero and starting all over again.
Yeah.
So,
but at the same time, Ms. Walker-Schuman, they're always, if there is going to be some progress, they're also talking about, and this is what gets confusing, is that if in January there's, better days ahead and rates start going down, they're going to actually change the definition of the word cohort, and because they know that we're so limited, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's on the field, and they are more, there's more opportunity for them to change the cohort from 12 to either 14 or 16 because it's outside. So they're getting ready to make those adjustments as well. If we reach a peak, start improving.
Plus, we're limited on what facilities we can use too, in terms of the fact that we cannot go inside for courts. And we're using makeshift tennis courts right now to do the girls volleyball they're doing right now.
Right, I understand. I guess my real concern is that we have a much smaller group of students that are on varsity sports than on JV sports. And what it does is it creates an environment where only the JV students get to have any kind of practice or conditioning for the foreseeable future. And I just wonder if it isn't more prudent to alternate weeks where we have the JV students come one week and then the varsity students come the next, so that everyone has a little more equitable exposure to, the coaches, the sport, being around their teammates, even in small cohorts. It just feels a little inequitable for the non-varsity kids to have zero time with their teammates and coach.
Well, and part of the situation with the lower levels is a lot of those lower level teams change in terms of, we were talking, the email I sent out today to the coaching staff was the fact that we were supposed to do tryouts next week, but there's no physical way that we can bring athletes back on in a safe, and I made that decision in a safe way that we could actually try them out in a way that would be proper. So I met with several coaches today to talk about how they would like a tryout situation if it all occurred. Right now we are, as you said, we're more worried about the fall sports because they will start up quicker than the other ones. Basketball, soccer, and those are important, but their seasons don't start right now till the middle of March. So it's not as important that we try those kids out as it is that we take care of the fall sports, the water polo teams, the volleyball teams. Obviously football and cross country, we don't cut in those sports. So that's what we're working on, a way to be able to safely bring those kids out, try them out, get those teams set up before we move into, will probably be now after winter break, then to be able to move forward with those seasons.
Yeah. So I guess my question just is there any path to bringing back the JV students instead of relegating them to kind of second fiddle whenever we get to phase 2, given that it's only the beginning of December and we may not be in that red zone until February?
Oh, absolutely. We're looking at, when we get back from Christmas break or winter break, whatever you want to call it, in terms of that point in time, we'll be into full scale practicing, where our teams will be, if we're on schedule to start competitions. The first league competition in volleyball is, I want to say, the 14th or 15th of January. So when we get back, we will be into full blown practices as it permits in terms of physicality and being around, where all our programs will then be, our programs that are playing will be in full practices.
Well, okay. I just want to make sure that even if we're not back at that place yet, where we're back to full practice and we have competition starting, that even if we only can be doing conditioning, that the JV students also have exposure to that we don't make it only varsity, which is what is in the MOU, which is really kind of the crux of my concern. I think it ought to include all of the students, even if it has to rotate by week. I don't think it ought to only serve the varsity students.
And the reason we started that when we first did that is we wanted to get everything done with the varsity kids first, so that when we started to bring those JV kids back, that the procedures and priorities had been set so they could show those lower level kids in terms of that.
Yeah. I think we all expect it to be going back faster than it looks like we're going to now. So I understand the intent and I thank you for it. This obviously took a huge amount of work. I just want to make sure we don't forget our JV.
No, we're not at all.
I think the key piece to when we look at MOUs is that obviously we have language that we're working on. This is unprecedented times to be doing MOUs regarding bringing coaches back. And I think too, the key piece is that we're having ongoing communication with the unions. And even in today's meeting, we talked about how this is going to be approved today, yet it's already changing, right? The nature of it's changing and evolving. And to Mr. Ellis's credit, he's been communicating directly with coaches constantly. So, and BHA recognized that today. And one of the members who is a coach said, Tim is constantly communicating with them and updating them and getting our students as much as involved as we can. So to his credit, appreciate that. And I think, the language, I wouldn't get too hung up on some of these things, but because I know it's in all of our interest to get our kids back as many kids back as soon as possible.
Yeah. So to reiterate, I really want to thank you both. This is a lot of really hard work and laborious work. So thank you both, Matt and.
My pleasure.
I understand that this is not ideal by any means, because in the normal world, we would be having PE classes and everybody would be on the fields and everybody would be at school, but that's not what's happening. And so I do appreciate this stepping stone and getting us in the right direction to restart our programming to some level and some degree. So I fully support this. So I'm going to call for the question. If there's any more questions from anyone else, we'll move forward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. And we are moving on with our developer fees report from Mr. Roach.
Thank you, President. Members of the board, these next two reports I can go through fairly quickly. The annual developer fee report, the board will get every December, and it's a straightforward report. It just lists the developer fees coming into the district last year. Sure, if you can just page down a little bit, Ms. Starkins. You can see our developer fees that came in. If you can page back up a little bit. Right there, perfect. A majority of them, overwhelming majority of our developer fees are residential, 1.2 million. Just a smidgen of commercial developer fees for a total of $1.265 million collected in developer fees last year. And on those dollars, we earned $81,000 in interest. If you can go down, Ms. Starkins. The next part of the report is just a report of how those funds were expended. Remember, developer fees can only be spent on increasing student enrollment, i.e. meaning that the programs are increasing or expanding. So as such, we use developer fees for our reconfiguration of our school sites over the last couple of years, because that was a program expansion. So you can see here, we've broken down those expenses by school site, and we're required by the government code to break down the percentages. You can see there the amounts that were expended at Beverly Vista, Hawthorne, Horace Mann. Keep on going down. District-wide, we had some expenses. Keep on going down, Ms. Starkins. And you see here, there's also an indication of the cost of the collection of the developer fees. We pay the city of Beverly Hills 2% of collected funds to actually collect those developer fees on our behalf, which is about $25,000. The three biggest vendors in last year that we expended developer fees on were 2 construction vendors, Vector Construction and Fast Track Construction. And the third biggest vendor was TCDS. So this, like I said, this is a very straightforward report, and the board will see a report like this before the end of December each year. So any questions from the board?
Thank you for being so efficient. We will go to questions. Mr. Gershonian?
No questions. Thank you.
Mr. Margot?
No, but I think that's the first time we've seen a complete developer fee report. So thank you.
Mr. Spitz?
You're muted, Mr. Spitz.
That's right. We've never seen this report before. Glad to see it. Thank you.
Mrs. Walker-Schuman?
I would also just like to share with the public that developer fees are use it or lose it. So we're really lucky that we were able to use those fees on the reconfiguration, on a bunch of the reconfiguration projects.
I remember when I joined the board, I kept asking, how can we use the developer fees? How can we use developer fees? And so finally, when we were reconfiguring, the question was asked again, and the answer was like, let's look into that. And the answer came back that yes, we can. And so it was really nice to see that being used. Going forward, I have a question. As El Rodeo begins to reopen, just wondering, if Mr. Blake has thought of ways that some of those construction costs, if possible, since it's now going to be a K-5 school, can be transferred, to the developer fee ledger instead of BH or Measure E. I'm not sure if that has been thought of, but I'm sure that it's a good question to maybe pose as you go forward with the reopening of it at some point.
Since Mr. Roach is my Darth Vader every time I try to raid the pot, but I don't think so. Wade, unless there's something there, I think it's modernization and capital improvement. Whereas we have a number of other construction projects, particularly which we'll probably talk about this evening in Horace Mann, came out of the reconfiguration. So when that's something specifically tied to the reconfiguration, El Rodeo, I think, would be a stretch that it's a reconfiguration piece. In other words, we're remodeling the whole thing. So unless you see a way, I'd be happy to spend some of that money. Wade.
It's worth a question. Thank you again for this report, Wade. We're going to move on to, you're still on, Wade, and you're now going to do the first interim report, right?
Yes, ma'am. So the first interim report is our first budget report of the year. As the board knows, this report has to be certified. There's 3 certifications: a positive certification, a qualified certification, or a negative certification. We'll ask the board to certify as a positive certification, meaning that we can pay our bills this year and the following 2 years, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. Go ahead and go down, Ms. Starkins. So we're going to talk about the general fund. The best way to look at the general fund, or the best way to understand the general fund, is to understand it at a micro level before you look at the macro number. So at a micro level, if you look at each dollar that comes into the general fund, you should look at it in this way. So next slide. So each dollar that comes into the general fund can be broken down as 70 cents of each dollar comes from our local Beverly Hills property taxes. 18 cents comes from local Beverly Hills, either the City of Beverly Hills JPA, our BHEF neighbors, PTAs, gifts, donations. So 88 cents of every dollar that comes in really comes from our local community. And that's really why we are a community funded district. You will not see this in very many other districts. Only about 10% of the districts in California are funded this way. Most are funded from the state of California. So we are a community funded district. 8 cents comes from the state of California, things like the EPA fund, CTE, lottery, mandated cost grant, and only 4 cents of each dollar comes from the federal government, our title programs and things like that. So it's really important to understand as you talk to your neighbors, 88 cents of every dollar we have to operate the school district comes from our neighbors. So next slide. So as we expend that dollar, this is how we expend those dollars. 53 cents of each dollar is expended on certificated non-management compensation. So that's salaries and benefits for non-managers that are certificated. That would be our teachers and our counselors, those folks. 18 cents of each dollar is spent for classified non-management compensation, and 15 cents is for services and other operating expenses like insurance, utilities, legal, other contracts. 8 cents of every dollar that's expended will be expended for management compensation, salaries and benefits. 4 cents for books and other supplies, and 2 cents for deferred maintenance. So this is a great slide to understand that most of our money that's expended are for our greatest asset, which are our people. And then we expend a lot of money for services like insurance and utilities. 4 cents for books and supplies, which is on par for all the districts in the state of California, actually, and then 2 cents for deferred maintenance. Okay. So looking at it at a macro level, here you'll see how we adopted the general fund budget. You can see this is the revenue slide. You see we adopted it saying that our total general fund revenue was going to be about 80.3 million. Now at first interim, we're at 81.9 million. You can see here our federal revenue went up from 2.1 to 3.7, and state revenue went up from 3.8 to 4.2. Those are COVID dollars. Those are pandemic dollars we received to address COVID issues. So those were put back into the budget. Next slide. And on the expense side, you can see that total expenses at budget adoption back in June were projected to be 81.5 million. At the first interim, 83.2. And that delta between the two really are the COVID expenses. Previous slide was COVID revenue. This slide reflects the COVID expenses. Overall, the operational impact, revenues minus expenses, really didn't change that much from budget adoption. The ending fund balance did change because when we adopted the budget back in June, we did not know what our ending balance was going to be from 1920. Now at first interim, we know what our ending balance was. We add that to our fund balance, and that's why you see that change of $3 million. Okay, next slide. So now that we have the general fund figured out, we want to put those numbers into our multi-year projections. Next slide. These are our assumptions and placeholders as we build an updated multi-year projection report. You can see our enrollment numbers. We talked about that earlier in the board meeting. We have the consumer price index for the next 3 years. We have our required teacher FTE. So based on declining enrollment, we anticipate we will have to make some staffing adjustments. So that's what you see there. We have put a placeholder in the multi-year projection of a 2% compensation increase for the out year, next year and the out years. This is only a placeholder. Compensation has to be negotiated, as everyone knows. We've put in our expected workers' comp percentages over the next years, what we expect property tax growth to look like. We put in the City of Beverly Hills JPA agreement. There's an asterisk in the 23-24 year, in that we'll have to renegotiate by then that agreement, because that agreement is only for 3 years. And we continue to make our OPEB annual contribution of 2%. So those are our assumptions and placeholders. And you put those into the multi-year projections, and this is what you get. You have your, when you look at this, you have your general fund beginning fund balance, you have your revenues minus expenditures, your transfers out. The transfers out are the dollars we transfer out for deferred maintenance and food service support. Then you have an operational gain or loss. Then you have your ending fund balance. You have what we have in Fund 17. And then you have your total ending fund balance and the reserve. So you can see at the end of 21-22, based on all those assumptions and placeholders, our reserve for economic uncertainty would actually be 26.2%. So if you remember at the last board meeting, we were talking about hitting a 25% reserve. So at the end of 21-22, we actually do that. We get to a 25% reserve. Although in 22-23 and 23-24, we do fall back down to the 23.8% range. So this is a very positive multi-year projection. It's conservative, and we've built in some possibilities for employee compensation increases in the out years. Next slide. So just go on to the next slide, Ms. Starkins. So I'm not going to go through all these slides. You can go through them yourselves, but basically they're all the same. It shows the beginning balance, then it shows the revenues coming in, the expenditures, and then the ending fund balance. So if you can go, keep on going. Go ahead. These are all of our other funds. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. Okay. So at second interim in March, this is what you should expect, that we'll have an update of current year and projected property tax revenue. It's coming in actually a little bit stronger in the current year than we anticipated. So hopefully if that holds, we'll have some positive news. We'll have an update on pandemic response, dollars expended and any additional dollars that we may receive. We'll have our 21-22 initial staffing projections. We'll update the board on any changes in state or federal funding. If we have a collective bargaining agreement, we'll bring that to the board or bring the impacts of that to the board at the second interim. And if we have any legal settlement updates. So this is the first interim report as of the end of October. We asked the board to certify it as a positive certification, and overall, the district's in good fiscal shape. Any questions?
Okay, so we'll go to questions. I see you, Mr. Spitz. Let me just go around. Mr. Kashanian.
No questions.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Wade, my only concern is the dip in the from the 25%. So I think what we're going to need to do moving forward is start coming up with a plan of how we may be able to prevent us slipping under the 25. That everything else looks pretty strong. Sometimes I think, are we spending too much? Is there always room for some necessary cuts? But judging that you did this conservatively, we may be able to find the money just in the audited actuals. We may be able to change that, because that's usually where we hit that mark. When we don't, spend as much as we've budgeted, and we can move forward from there. But that right now, that's the only alarm, that we just voted to set this goal. We're going to reach the goal, and then we're going to have the goal pulled out from under us. So I just want to make sure that managing this moving forward, we take a look at those items that could help us keep the reserve up to 25%. Thanks.
Spitz.
Yes, Mr. Roach, can we backtrack to the slide that shows local Beverly Hills property taxes being 70% of revenue? Could we get back to that one?
Go on back a little bit more, Ms. Starkins. One more. Perfect.
Yeah. You show 70 cents from local Beverly Hills property taxes. My understanding is that the property tax revenue that we receive happens to be a very, very tiny share of the overall LA County tax revenue. Can you enlighten me on that?
Yes, so the calculation of local property taxes was actually established in the late 1970s, and it's a pretty arcane formula where they take the whole pot of property taxes from LA County, and then they divvy it up based on the property. They actually divvy it up based on the property values in Beverly Hills, but it's not say a dollar transfer. A dollar that's collected from Beverly Hills goes into our coffers. It first goes into a bigger pot, and then it's reshuffled, if you will. It's a very arcane formula that I think 2 people in the whole state understand. But in general, the value of the property taxes of the property in Beverly Hills does drive the revenue that eventually comes into the district.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Walker-Schuman.
This is just for the sake of clarifying a point of confusion that I think exists, and rightly so, because it is a confusing topic. There have been comments made over the last several months from parents that were upset that we hadn't gone back to in-person learning, that they were going to withhold their children from education so that the attendance would go down and that would negatively impact our revenue. Would you be so kind as to explain that that is not in fact what happens, so that parents don't keep their children out of school hoping to have an outcome like that, which ends up only really detrimentally impacting their student?
Yes, so in 90% of the school districts in the state of California, they are funded under a formula called LCFF, where the actual daily attendance does drive the revenue that the school district receives. Beverly Hills is a community funded district where attendance does not drive the funding. Our property taxes drive the funding for our district. Now, attendance is important because you want, for many other reasons, but it does not, keeping your child out of school to hurt the district doesn't hurt the district, it hurts your student.
Thank you. Thank you. You stole my line. That's how I was going to close. Thank you for clarifying, Mr. Roach.
Thank you, Mr. Roach. I don't have any questions. I appreciate your work on this presentation, and we're very lucky, and I think we should. I will make a motion to approve the first interim budget. I was still making my comments, and thank you, Mr. Spitz. And you can, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. That passes 4-0. Mrs. Marcus is absent. And I believe we have another presentation. Who's doing that?
I'm going to get it started, and then Mr. Seaman may jump in to help me with this presentation. This is a new template that we've received from the state of California to assist parents to understand the LCAP and LCFF. I don't know, Ms. Starkins, if you were able to pull it up, but I'm gonna start with an editorial, and I don't usually do this. This template was really built and designed for districts that are LCFF funded and not basic aid districts. So when you input all the parameters into this template, it gives you numbers that really don't make much sense. It's supposed to give us clarity or give parents clarity, but it really doesn't do much of that because it's not really designed for districts like Beverly Hills Unified. What you have, if you can just go down a little bit, the information that I would point out is that right there, you can see that in the middle there, there's a number of $881,000. Basically, if we receive supplemental and concentration grants, which we don't because we're not LCFF, those are funds that LCFF districts receive for at-risk students, low socioeconomic students, EL learners, homeless youth, and we don't get those dollars. But for those districts that do get those dollars, this report was designed to make sure that those districts actually direct those dollars towards programs for those students that generate those dollars. So that's really the whole basis of this report, so that parents can see that these dollars are going for these students. But for us, we have to bring this to the board. It's a requirement, just like the LCAP, but it doesn't really show our public much information about how these dollars are used, other than to give you an amount. So Dustin, you're welcome to jump in, but that's kind of my explanation of this report.
Correct. This is to piggyback off Mr. Roach. This is one of the new forms that we might not see moving forward, to be totally transparent. It came out of the COVID-19 form that was in replacement of the LCAP in the spring. And then we had to submit, and we just resubmitted the learning continuity plan. And this is just an additional extension of that 3-part series. We hope that as things become more normal in the spring, we will go back to the old format of the LCAP, where it'll be a more formalized presentation where the budget and the instructional services will come together into one form. So this is just the state's way of kind of piecemealing what it should be a larger project into smaller projects.
Thank you for that. Anything else on this issue before we go to the board for comments or questions? Thank you. We'll start with Student Board Member Mr. Kashanyan.
No question.
Mr. Margot.
Is this just information only, or is this a voting item?
Information.
Information only.
Okay.
I think because of our budget, they needed to cover this piece.
Okay, thank you.
Let me see, where am I? Mr. Spitz. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Walker-Schuman.
No questions.
I have no questions as well. Thank you again for putting this together. I know that it's a piece of the budget, so you were required to bring it to our attention. We are going to skip the next items, being that Mr. Blake already provided an update on B3 and B4, unless there was
President Hacker, we have a claim, rejection claim.
Thank you for that. May I have can you please make a motion for that, and then
I'd like to move for the rejection of claim number 588876.
I will second that. Any questions? Are those in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you for that. That passes 4-0. I'm going to skip the next item, being that we already discussed it, and we're going to move on with our agenda to item 15B. I'll make a motion for the approval of amendment number 3 to the agreement with ARB Incorporated for the abandonment of oil wells.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That passes 4-0. I will make a motion for item 15C, ratification of amendment number 2 to the agreement with SVA Architects for architectural services for Horseman School Site Enhancements Project.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Spitz. Any questions from the board or comments? Mr. Margot, I see your hand. You have the floor.
All right. Yeah, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I have a question. Don or Sierra, whoever wants to handle this. I was curious about how this came about because of the recent construction in Building A at Horseman. What was the issue that was not exposed or that was unknown? Because wouldn't we have already gone through the process after building this to have that information of what was on, where did we miss where was a step missed in the past that we didn't have that information?
Well, I think the area that they're describing had to be removed in order to put the dance floor in. And once they uncovered it and removed it, there's some structural elements that needed to be put in for that dance floor.
So is that because of the change in use and a dead load issue?
It's point load and dead load.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay. It just, it just seemed weird that we didn't. It just seemed weird that that information wasn't available to us. That we didn't know what was under there before we got into the redesign, because we had just finished. We just opened that building 2 years ago. So.
I guess you're asking, did they have access to as-built, correct?
Yeah, shouldn't they have?
I think that, of course, their as-built are available, but this design issue was brought up by DSA. And so they had to go back and reevaluate it, and I wouldn't say redesign it, but design it for DSA. So the additional
did that apply to because the next item applied to the DSA, but this one, the transmittal on this one didn't state. It said that Well, let me backtrack. So the additional visit to the site that warranted the observation of subfloor conditions, that additional visit was sparked by a DSA correction?
Correct. Well, and the structural engineer, both are the same. So the structural engineer went out and determined that the additional work would need to be done that was not uncovered.
Could this information could have been foreseen with the previous plans?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
If it was an existing condition or if it was a built condition.
All right, I see the opportunities that we will actually be running into ripping up recent construction to be pretty limited. But if it does go in that direction, I would like to make sure that we have covered all our bases as far as the as-builts, because they're newer. So on these new buildings. So that was my only concern with this item.
And unfortunately, nevertheless, the structural engineer did need to go out and did need to do the calculations and did need to submit to DSA.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Did you have a question about the other DSA?
No, that one.
Okay, any further questions for Mr. Blake on this item? Okay, we're going to call for the question. All those in favor? Aye. Mr. Spitz, are you voting with us? We just call for the question.
Aye.
Thank you. 4-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion for the ratification of Amendment 3 to the agreement with SVA Architects for services at Horace Mann.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions on this one? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. Moving on, let's see here.
I'll make a motion for the approval of the agreement with Dell Technologies for OS and IDF upgrades.
I'll
District
second that. Thank you. Any questions on this?
I had asked the department if this was something previously included in our proposed technology budget, of which the answer was yes. So, thank you.
Yes, Trustee Margot, just to give you a little bit more information regarding technology and the bond, this will take 30 seconds.
I didn't ask, Wade. This is on you now.
I did. I asked no questions.
Oh, thank you, Tristan.
So we've allocated $12.6 million for technology such as this, and we've committed $957,000, give or take. We expect in the next few months to bring a plan to the board for refresh, which means how often or however many years need to go by before we refresh our student computers and our staff computers. So there's sufficient funds in the budget for technology. We've committed only less than $1 million of a $12.6 million budget. But we do need to bring a refresh plan to the board for discussion and approval very soon.
Thank you, Mr. Roach, for sharing that. I know I saw that on the questions and answers, and I had asked that this be shared publicly so that everyone can understand, follow where we're at with our technology needs and plans. Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you for that again. I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's 4-0. Thank you. Next item on the agenda.
I'll make a motion for the adoption of Resolution 2020-2021-021, awarding pre-construction services to Pro West for the high school South Campus modernization project.
I'll second.
Okay, any questions? I have a question on this one. So I noticed this is a resolution, and so this is for this at this point we're asking, the board is being asked, let's see here, let me get it, to award the pre-construction services agreement to Pro West. But what about the part two, the actual construction piece of this? With this, I'm assuming that if it's going to Pro West for the pre-construction, it would most likely be Pro West who does the construction services at the end.
Yes, well, a couple of things I think is really important to clarify. why are we doing pre-construction services now? That would be a question. And then the other question you just asked is, how does this tie into how the leaseback continues through? Our intention is to do the same thing with the site work, meaning just the site work and the demolition of the Conheim building, and particularly the retaining wall. That scope of work is pre-construction service specifically for that. It's not pre-construction services for building C. And the reason is we felt, the attorneys, myself, and even Pro West felt it's prudent to have that. It's a large project. It's not a remodel, it's a new building, that we should do an RFQ for a leaseback, go through the same process that we did with Pro West. However, the site work and the retaining wall, as you recall, in November last year, about this time last year, we did a presentation to the board where the context was to make the decision or give direction to have the design for building C from a 3-story as it was at that time to a 1-story. That was the context of that presentation. The second part of that context of that presentation was, how is that tied to the site work, and how does that tie to advancing the schedule? So we presented the program schedule that was in the bond originally, and we presented, here are the projects that can advance. And each of the aggregate was about 2 years from that original master plan. So in that meeting, the issue was direction to initiate the architects to design a 1-story parking on building C, which we've been in the middle of for the last year. And that schedule is a 23-month schedule to make that whole thing work, and it all tied together. In order to not have a gap in construction, or for Tim have gaps or the longest time without program, we planned how to advance that and to how to phase that without interruption. When I say interruption, I mean coming off of B3, B4, and coming on to building C, the site work, etc. So with that direction, what I've done this year is we've worked through the design with building C. Currently, that original schedule we're on schedule with. The original schedule we presented in November of last year, we included the oil wells, which we have completed. We included building C, the site work, which includes the demolition of Conheim, building H at that time, and this giant retaining wall. So where we are is building C is going into DSA the 30th of this month. So presuming that takes place, we are right on schedule with building C. What that means is the rest of the site, which will come to this next resolution, we broke up the DSA A numbers into pieces so we could do like we always do, start work ahead. So the site work and the retaining wall will come out probably in 4 months from the time it goes into DSA, whereas building C could be there as long as 9 months. So in order to not have a gap in construction, our plan was to follow that direction and do an amendment to just like we did B3 before, do an amendment to include and move over to the rest of the site work, and most importantly, the retaining wall. We need to build a retaining wall in order to build building C. So the sequences of how we put all this thing together from the direction we took in November last year was to put this together, find the best sequencing, and be able to have a plan. Once we did that, normally in B1, B2, for example, the pre-construction services were basically embedded in the GMAX. because we had DSA approved set of drawings. And the legislature at that time, statute was at that time, is that you couldn't do pre-construction services and do the GMAX. It was called a conflict of interest. However, that statute has changed. Since then, new statute is that you can do pre-construction services and do the GMAX, even do them separately. So the plan is for pre-construction services to begin on the site work, because we want to do this work at the beginning of the DSA submittal and not at the end of the DSA submittal, right? We know what that yields. We want it at the beginning. That's number one. Number two, I want market prices. I won't get that from the architect. We want current market prices every step of the way. Reason is, I want to ensure that there's no capital shortfall in this program. So that's the reason. How would we now answer your question about how does it work the second phase? The GMAX gives us what we need now, which is basically estimating and QA, QC on the drawings that are at DSA. That will lead into the pre-construction services always is the precursor to the GMAX. You do that in order to develop the GMAX. So it's a little ahead of the GMAX, which is true. And it's because the reason why we made that decision and spent all the time we did to be sure that we were within those boundaries of the Ed code, which is 17406, to make sure that there was no questions and no concerns. So the pre-construction services in this case is ahead of the GMAX, and it's ahead of the approved drawings. We are within statute to do that. But more importantly, programmatically, I'm fast tracking everything that I can to advance construction with no gaps. So our original plan we presented to the board in November last year was planned that we would break ground on Building C 23 months from January, this last January. We're still on track with that. DSA, gosh, we hope, will be, it's a new building, please, we hope. We know that there's some concern. We've had several meetings with Doug Humphreys already, and concern has been about putting anything over a tunnel. We think we're through that, and we've all agreed, we have agreements with MTA and DSA, which we have before we submitted this last round. So we're comfortable that we've addressed their concerns. We'll get the submittal in December, and Building C will be in the queue for about 8 to 9 months. The site work and the retaining wall, we expect to have that in 3 to 4 months. So in order for the work to continue and GMAX continue, we felt it prudent to continue that aspect because it's one site. The lease back is for a site, it's one site. Having said that, I want to be clear that we, even Randy Craig feels it's prudent and it's a good idea to put Building C out as a new RFQ for the lease back, which we will do in February.
Thank you. I think that was your 10-minute presentation right there.
Oh.
No, you were very, very eloquent. Thank you. And for explaining that to me. I needed that explanation. So any further questions from anyone on the board? No? Dustin, you better put that hand down. Okay, so we are ready for a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Mr. Blake. I appreciate your explanation. It was very helpful for me. Okay, moving on. May I have a motion?
Yeah, I'll make approval to Amendment 7 to the leaseback agreement with Pro West for buildings B1, B2, modernization for work related to buildings B3, B4.
I'll second.
Mr. Blake, did you want to expand on this one, or?
Just briefly, so we're all clear about it. And I made a decision to pull this retaining wall, which is exclusively a structural design piece, from DLR's contract. So I pulled that out, And we're putting this, which is more appropriate, because this retaining wall would be a design build that the builder would do. Okay, so what this is for is to provide for the design cost for that retaining wall. And it will be under the GMAX contract and not under DLR's design. However, DSA is aware of it, and we've gone through all the process to be sure that the structural engineer that's doing this work is approved by DSA. This speeds up our program by about 6 months, and we have control over the design and the cost, which I like.
Very well. Thank you for that as well. Any further questions? No? Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to call for the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 4-0. And now we are at almost the very end. I did want to say one thing that I skipped over. I did not have any comments today to be read into the record, so that's why we didn't. We kind of glossed over that. So just wanted to clarify that for everyone. We are at board communication. So we will start with student board member Mr. Kashanian. Any comments?
Yeah, students, tomorrow is the junior class Chipotle fundraiser at the Chipotle on South Beverly Drive. And this Saturday, we have the senior Chipotle fundraiser at the Chipotle on North Beverly Drive. So please go show your support. Also, we have Broadway night this Saturday night on the 6th. And we have our first sophomore night next Monday, the 7th. Lastly, our last event of the year is going to be our annual talent show, which is going to be next Thursday. Please come show your support for our fellow students. And as an added incentive for students, many teachers are offering extra credit if you attend. So the flyer is going to be sent out soon. If you see your teacher's name, then lucky you. That's all. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much. Mr. Margo.
Thank you. I just wanted to quickly give a summary of the last LA County School Trustee Association meeting, which was held last night. Dr. Breggy was also in attendance there. I'll just hit the points. The focus was on ethnic studies. They asked us to ask certain questions like, what does it look like in our community? They made points about, there was a panel made up of board members, administrators, and a law student from Berkeley representing different aspects of ethnic studies. So they said that we need to get a team to roll out a program. We have to have people behind it. You need to get buy-in for it to be successful. So there has to be professional development, and it has to be tailored to the demographics in our own community. We can't just do this blanket ethnic studies. We have to customize it using a task force to make sure we're covering what we need to in our community. Some schools are starting with foundation courses and then branching out to pathway courses. I know I say pathway, Dustin gets excited. One point that was made by one of the principals was that the United States is not a melting pot, it is a mosaic. That was repeated several times, which was an interesting point. You also have to get everybody on the same page in order for this to be successful, and it requires a paradigm shift with educators because they have to be trained how to deliver this kind of information, and the fact that students' voices are the most important when developing an ethnic studies program. Teachers' workshops are also critical. So those are the points. I'll be happy to, when we move into that more of the phase after March, when the state ratifies its final requirements for this. I'm sure we'll have all these conversations again, but that was from last night. The other final thing I wanted to say was I know on the 15th we have our reorganizational meeting, but being this is the last regular scheduled meeting that President Hacker has led, I just wanted to point out it's been a heck of a year, Mrs. Hacker, for you to lead the charge here on the board. So I wanted to acknowledge your efforts in the past year as president of this board. Nobody would want to step into this during a time of world pandemic. So thank you for everything you've done. And I'm sure we will loud you with goodies on the 15th. So thanks.
You're muted.
I know I have so many things on my screen.
Was I muted the whole time?
No, I was muted.
Sorry. Oh,
No. But yes, I'm going to say yes to that. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. Moving on, Mr. Spitz.
Well, I'm going to save my comments about Mrs. Hacker's leadership until our next meeting, which I think is the 15th. And so I'll just
thank you.
Everybody to stay safe and have a nice dinner tonight.
Yes, thank you. And Mrs. Walker-Schuman.
I hope everyone had a good holiday and it was different than we like to celebrate. And we're headed into, another set of holidays that are probably going to look very different than we have had in the past. So I just wish for everyone to stay healthy, stay safe, stay home, wash your hands, wear your mask. And, it doesn't look good right now, but hopefully we'll be able to pull through and have a little more positive outlook in January. Yeah, that's all I got for today.
Thank you. I just want to share with you, I first of all want to acknowledge Mr. Krishanian's board report. I was going to give a big shout out to the fundraising efforts that are taking place this week. So thank you for mentioning those. I did want to just pull some information from CSBA that came across our wire this morning. EdSource is reporting that early data on learning shows that there was a loss and there was a big drop in math for students, but not in reading skills. And so there's more information on that if you want to look it up at CSBA. And also Politico is reporting that California families, as you might have heard, sued the state over distance learning inequities. 7 families took California to court Monday, accusing the state of failing to ensure basic educational equality during a prolonged period of remote learning and the pandemic. So there's more information on that if you want to hear about this. And basically the challenges of distance learning are much more pronounced in inequities across the state and in the public educational system. And the barriers in particular have affected Black and Latino students across the state. There's also the Los Angeles Times. They had an article on the pain on the online learning. And I would recommend every parent to read that and to just, it's very good information to know and to just really, I think, shadows the pandemic and the challenges that the educational system is having, not only here locally, but, in the state of California and across the country. But as Dr. Breggy said earlier today, I feel very proud of the educational program that we're providing for our students. And there was a wonderful, and I know Dr. Breggy alluded to this earlier in his report, the highlights, our student paper came out with a wonderful article about how well they perceive this pandemic and the delivery of our educational program has come together during these times of great challenge. And so they always say children don't lie, and I believe that, and they always tell the truth. And so I think that's the best article of the year so far for this school board and for the district. So I would encourage all of you to read it. And I thank the Highlights student board for their thoughtful decorum in putting such a positive and, I believe, very true article together. And with that, I want to say our leadership administration, our admin team today has started to work on your behalf since 9 o'clock this morning with negotiations. And then they took a small break and then they started again at 2 o'clock with closed session. And the board has been in closed session since 2 in the afternoon, not the morning. And here we are now, it's 9 o'clock almost, just a few minutes shy of 9 p.m. So thank you all for your patience and your due diligence and your work tonight. And we will see each other, God willing, in 2 weeks. Have a good night.